Hi guys, and welcome to the Gin and Tonic Show. We help Muslims and non-Muslims alike to understand and handle Islam in the 21st century. We consider ourselves to be decent human beings, so we condemn categorically any abuse, oppression, misogyny, slavery, violence, anything like that. We do embrace, however, free speech and also criticism, even if it is directed at us, if it is factual and constructive criticism. We focus on Islam exclusively. So if you're curious about anything Islam, you've come to the right place. Now, we don't attack, which is aggressive, destructive, and antagonistic, neither Islam nor Muslims. We ask questions and show facts. We refute false claims and present the reality of Islam, which is political Islam. We inspect, investigate, research, analyze, and then report and critique on Islam, the ideology, not the people. Now, the live stream goes to YouTube and Facebook, and there are three ways that you can participate in this. Either you join us in the live written chat, you can join the panel during the live show, or later on watch and comment the archive. And anyone can join to comment, critique, contribute, or question. This is not a Dawah channel with censorship. Don't go to Patreon, don't go to PayPal. Everything here is free. The way we work is usually we have some news, some Krazy Komments, a segment where we go and read the Koran, and then a discussion on the theme of the month, followed by integrating the live chat, ending with a Hadith of the week. And there, if this is not enough Islam for you, there's still the Discord channel where you can discuss with us without anything being recorded. See you later and enjoy the Gin and Tonic Show. Hi guys, welcome. It is November. It is the 27th of November and it's getting flipping cold. Let me tell you, I hate it. And I hope everybody's fine. I hope everybody has managed to run from this SARS-CoV-2 causing COVID, and I hope that everybody is fine. I hear that there are a lot of countries which are going into lockdown again because of the second, third, or I don't know how manyth wave we are facing at the moment. How are the gentlemen in the panel? V like thunderous, without any fancy name today. How are you?
Fine, thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, Stomps. Thank you, Robs. And to the audience, welcome to the show. It's been a quiet week, and just preparing for another period of lockdown and shenanigans and narratives that we're being sold in the United Kingdom.
Yeah, we're getting used to it. And Mr. Rob, how are you doing?
Good evening, everybody. Evening, Stops and Thunderous. Evening to all the viewers. A warm welcome to the show, and we're going to have an interesting video later on. But before that, we've got a few other things in store.
Like what? Halloween?
Maybe you can tell everybody what your name means.
Oh, yeah, well, there's two things I need to explain because once again, I have my mother as my avatar, which I was challenged to do by Jason, and he said that I would not be able to do that. Well, I've pulled it through for the whole month because I don't mind. I have freedom of expression and I don't have anything to hide. If this is my mum, I don't think anybody is going to cause her any harm by looking at her. So I think it's okay. And don't worry, next week I'm going to change it to something else. Now, the name is something very different because I am frequently called an Islamophobe. And I've asked people, and this was quite funny in a Discord chat, I asked them, like, I was trying to be super clever, so I said, what can I think of? I said, okay, explain Islamophobe. And I thought, okay, question number 1, question number 2, question number 3. And they couldn't answer any one of them. And they said, well, what's your question? And I realized I was changing the question every time because this was not rehearsed. This was just something that came from the top of my head. So they called me an Islamophobe. they couldn't really explain what it is. In the end, it was just, well, Islam equals a Muslim, and this is why you're insulting all Muslims, and a phobia is a phobia, and that's why it's a phobia. So they couldn't explain it. They didn't even know what a phobia is. They made all sorts of funny things. So, and Aletheia is from ancient Greek. So Socrates' son, you're going to love this. So Aletheia is truth, all right? So alethiophobia is the unwarranted fear of the truth. And I am an anti-alethiophobist. So in other words, I'm all for truth. I don't know. Does it make sense? No. Is it funny? I don't know. I think it's quite cute. I like it anyway. So, what are we going to do today? Welcome to the chat. Welcome to the people watching. It's so great to have people out there watching us and checking what we're doing, checking what we're saying, and keeping us honest at the same time. I quite appreciate that, because when we do make mistakes, somebody will point it out and say, listen, this is where it's at. Just rethink that again. And that's good. That's how we learn. And I think I welcome that. So you heard that we're going to, get some news, Krazy Komments, Koran, theme of the month, and then the closing Hadith. So I've only got to keep it very short today, because we're going to have a video that we're going to review a bit later on. I've only got one news item, which is, I don't know if you have heard of model Halima Aden, or Aden. I don't know how you pronounce Aden. It starts with an A and then D-E-N. I don't know whether it's Aden or Aden. I've been to Aden, the city in Yemen, but maybe she pronounces her name differently. And now she decided to quit fashion shows because of her religious beliefs, which she said she had to compromise. Now, Aden shot to fame in 2016 following the Miss USA beauty pageant, where she was seen by Karen Reutfeld, who is a fashion editor. And then she got signed up to the global modeling agency IMG, did some runway shows, and went up in the modeling world, in the fashion world, and she even did some of Kanye West's, and apparently Max Mara is a name. I do not know these. I'm not into this fashion world, and she now had to stop. According to her, I don't know what you want to call that. Is that morality? Is that her feelings? I don't know what to call that, because she said this is against her belief.
Modesty.
What?
Modesty.
Is it modesty? Well, if you sign up for a beauty pageant, what is it that you expect? Are you gonna sign up because of modesty? I don't think so. So, well, maybe she's just a hypocrite. I don't know. But anyway, so this is now the number one news item, that this woman now stopped going into the fashion world, and she's no longer be walking on stage, maybe only in a hijab or a burqa. Maybe underneath the burqa she's going to have the fashion, or maybe on top of the burqa. Who knows? But this is something apparently that is newsworthy. Okay. Now, we have some crazy comments. Rob, did you have some? Because you said that you're going to have some, because I only have a total of 3.
Let me have a quick look. I'm sure I can
Then
bring them
my
up.
3 are these ones, where somebody sent me, hang on, let me just switch off the names. I forgot again where to do that. Jukes. Right, there we go. I don't know where I find these people. Now, I've been in a discussion with this guy who doesn't understand evolution, who doesn't understand anything about science, and I said to him, these things don't change, and he says, well, distance, distance, speed, and time are all relative, as Einstein found through scientific insight in the early 20th century. It's called the general theory of relativity, which is the best theory we have today that explains the physics around us. It is incomplete and will be overturned in the future when we find a better theory. You know nothing about science.
Oh dear.
I thought this is so funny.
Presumably, this poor fella will think that something like Newtonian mechanics has been overturned, not
Exactly.
realizing that general relativity is an extension on, Newtonian mechanics, which works perfectly well here on Earth, but there's something missing. And the same when you get to quantum mechanics, right? General relativity doesn't work at quantum mechanical levels. But as Sean Carroll says, right, and let's just do somebody who's actually in the field within a particular domain of applicability, particular theories, be it evolution or Newtonian mechanics or general relativity, works extremely well in that domain of
Environment,
applicability.
exactly. Yeah.
We're still waiting for a theory of everything, if there is such a thing. But that's the holy grail, if there is such a thing out there.
Well, I'm
But
beginning
what
to
we have
think
so
there
far
isn't.
works well within its domain, and so I think that's
Yeah.
what we need to point out to this particular fella, as if the theories are like overturned; they're just improved upon, and in new domains we come up with new and better explanations. Not
But this is
difficult,
the
really.
theory of relatively. So, you never know how relative this actually is. I don't know, but the irony is the last sentence. You know nothing about science. And then, okay, well, all right, let's leave it. I mean, we all see what this is all about. So, this is somebody who asked to join a specific group. And this, I don't know if it's a girl, coquette, whatever. Now, it says there that this person joined Facebook a year ago. Okay, that's 350 or 360 days. And is in 943 groups. That's like 30 groups a day. How do you go and join 30 groups a day for 1 year?
I don't know how you find so many groups, right? Unless you're just asking to join any old random group.
And I thought, okay, I need to show you guys this because this is so weird. And I approved them. I don't know if I'm ever going to hear anything from them. I have no idea. But it's quite weird what people are doing. So I just thought, let me show you this. I found this very strange. So, yeah. And then this is one that Rob sent me, which is our favorite, the old inheritance, which is still being discussed. And they still... can you see my mouse? No, you can't. If you go down like 4/5 down, it still says 2/3 of 24,000. Now, please, 2/3 of 24,000. I mean, divide 24,000 by 3, you get to 8,000. If you multiply that by 2, you get 16,000. And according to this arithmetic here, 2/3 of 24,000 is 14,000. Okay? How can you get that? So anybody with I don't know, 3rd, 4th grade arithmetic can see that 24,000 divided by 3 times 2 is not 14,000. And this is not what the God in the Koran stipulates, I think. So if this God makes this equation, there's something wrong with this God.
Yeah,
So
I think what's clear there is this particular person obviously never did maths either. Because 9 divided by 0 is not possible. So presumably that was a mistype, and it's 9 divided by 8.
No, it's 9/10ths, I think.
I think it's 9 over 8 because, 20, what they're trying to say is, well, let's make 24,000 suddenly 23,133. Then if we make that the total and we divide up all the other bits, well, now we can give the wife a share there. Because that share, if you add that back into that, then you get 24,000. So what we're going to do is we're going to ignore the wife for the moment. We're going to reduce it by, an eighth, so that this is not 9 over 8. So we're just going to take away an eighth because, hey, if it says, there's too much, we just randomly take it away because we do our own version of maths. So that's going to become the total of 21,000. And we're going to divide that up through the 1/6, the 1/6, and the 2/3. And so we're going to do 1/6, 1/6, and 2/3 of 21,133, and then the 1/8. We're just going to include that back in. So even if you did this, it's still incorrect in the way that he's written it out there. But again, let's forget about all of it. It still doesn't add up, by the way, to 24,000. So there's still an error at the bottom there, as you can see. And I put at the very bottom there, sadly, this is a terrible response. Don't you notice the problem? And obviously he clearly doesn't or can't do maths or doesn't care.
And this is how easy it is to spot it. So, yeah. Okay, that was that.
And I'll do a couple quickly here. Let me just bring it up on screen. Well, it's actually kind of... No, I might have done this one before, actually, so let me not do Wayfair again. I think that was... Actually, I think I've done these ones. Let me just check something here. Yeah, I've done it. Remind me if I've done this one, so let me share screen on this. Where is it? Let's go full screen on that. Hopefully you can see that. So this was in the Discord server. I happened to have a little bit of a text chat. This was a couple of weeks back, I think. Okay, this is this guy's thinking, right? I've made a claim. It's your job to prove something, so we start off. If today I claim murder is correct, how will you oppose it? Of course, by starting something off. Again, Rob, I wait for your argument. And I'd explained this multiple times to him before. Then some other fellow said, are you there, mate? Well, he isn't. Well, and I explained many times that if you make the claim, then you need to substantiate. You don't make a claim and then ask me to refute it without you giving reasons. Anybody could do that. That's like shifting the burden. He doesn't want to talk. And then somebody else said there, please don't engage with Ron for now, as he has yet to reply to the hacker, me, and Sentinel. So presumably this guy thinks that you can just make claims and somebody else has to refute them. By the way, he's not the only person who does that.
But what do you do about it? Do you go, because I normally say, well, I've just created a fly. Because this is something that the Quran says you can't. So I say, okay, I've just created a fly. Now you prove that I didn't. No, you have to prove it. I said, oh suddenly it's that way around? This is what I normally do.
Yeah, I mean, that's another way you could do it. Yeah, for sure. Unfortunately, I don't have a program that makes it easy for me to just swap it over. I carry on. So here's another quick one here. This is the guy. If I provide you, so this is me, if I provide you an irrefutable error in the Quran, would you stop being a Muslim? No sane Muslim would ever leave Islam because of this. This is called obedience. Of course, what it's actually called is dogmatic thinking and an aversion to any evidence that might disprove your belief. So again, we have somebody who, and so somebody like this, I would only speak to this person if there was lots of people listening, because I have zero expectation this person will actually do any critical thinking or change their mind whatsoever. So normally if this was a one-on-one, I'd say, okay, thanks very much, you're a dogmatist and I'm off. But if there were some people listening, then I might engage, not because I think he's going to make a difference, but because hopefully somebody's listening that might pay attention. So I think that's the only reason I would speak to somebody like that, once I'd heard that sort of a comment. And here's I'll leave it as the final one for now. If I can actually get back to my thing. Here we go. So here's the last one. So this was it. He dismissed you as dogmatic without giving us why he believes and what he believes in, making his dismission invalid. Dismission, I don't know, invalid, and he is yet to give us an answer. Yeah, well, he has an issue with dogma. I also have my dogma. Yes, I have an issue with dogma. In other words, believing something without being open to changing your mind or having other evidence being presented to you. If you're going to be a dogmatist, then there's not much that we can do. But then you can't come to me and claim you're going to have a rational conversation. You are dismissed from that realm. You may go and sit elsewhere, but in terms of a rational discussion, if you're going to be dogmatic, then no, I'm afraid that's the end of that. I'll leave it there. I've got some others that we can bring up at a later stage.
Okay. All right. Then what we're going to do is we're going to read a couple of sentences from the Quran. Let me take this one. Now, what we did last time is this is in chapter 8, and I can't even remember what it's called. The spoils of war. Okay, so this is the religion of peace talking about the spoils of war. And we had that you have to be afraid of Allah, fear Allah, and He will provide you with whatever. And then remember how the unbelievers planned against you But Allah is a much better planner than the unbelievers. Okay. Sentence 31 in chapter 8 is the Quran is a repeat. Now, the sentence is not like this in the Quran. In the Quran, it's very different. Okay, there's a whole lot more. Like here, you can see there's several lines. What I'm doing is I'm trying to get the essence of it. So I'm trying to give you the condensed version of what it says in the Quran. So this is all that I could find that is actually being said in this sentence. Now, if I go to the long version, what Rob's just brought up, and when our verses are recited, they say, we have heard, if we will, we could say something like this is not but legend, or da-da-da. And this is why I'm saying the Quran is a repeat. So this is essentially what I see there. Why do you have two mouse pointers?
Can I just add on to that?
Sure.
What you'll notice in 31, it says there, let me just go to the Yusuf Ali, if I may, for a moment. When our signs are rehearsed to them, they say, we have heard this before. If we wish, we could say words like these. These are nothing but tales of the ancients. So, first of all, they're not even referring to this as previous scripture. They're referring to it as stories, which I think is a telling sign there. So you there?
Yeah, we're listening.
So something happened on my laptop. So first of all, they're saying there, we've heard this before. They're not even referring to it as scripture. They're referring to it as stories, which I think for me is a telling sign that they're not recognizing what he's saying, or if they are recognizing what he's saying, they're saying this, but this is stories. They're not referring to it as any kind of religious text. And the second thing is, in Yusuf Ali translation, it says that if we wished, we could say words like these. So these words can't be like some Muslims will say, these were fantastic words, this eloquence of speech.
Right.
They'd never heard anything like this before. But they are actually recognizing there's nothing special about what you're saying, Muhammad. We can speak like this too. So the critics are not saying anything about what he is saying. You know, when we have people on the show, and they like Benny said, he had this fantastic speech, it's eloquence, and the eloquence of the Arabic was the sign or the miracle, or the proof that it was coming from God, because he didn't have any other miracles at this moment in time. They're saying, hang on a minute, mate, we can rhyme like this. There's nothing special going on here.
That's exactly why I brought it down to the Quran is just a repeat. That is what I find, or what I hear when I read this. And that's exactly what I'm sort of putting out there. So in sentence 32, if it was authored by Allah, then this would shower us with stones. Okay.
That's like a double bluff. That's like me turning around and saying to the whole audience now, if I do not whack my laptop 3 times, then go on my back and do the dying fly, like they used to do in Tiswas in the early 80s as the kids program, for anybody that's watching, do the dying fly. If I don't do that, it's going to rain fire and sulfur and pigs tomorrow. So I had better tap my laptop 3 times and do the dying fly, or that's what's going to happen. So I do it, it doesn't happen, and then what happens is he'll fool people into thinking, see, it didn't rain this, that, or the other, because I did this. It's a double bluff.
Yeah, but Thunder, read it again carefully.
I'll read from Yusuf Ali. Remember how they said, "O Allah, if this is indeed the truth from you, rain down on us a shower of stones from the sky, or send us a grievous chastisement." For me, I'm reading it like a bluff.
No, this is okay. I'm reading it as somebody made a mistake here.
Okay, elaborate.
The knot is missing. If this is from you, shower us with stones.
Oh, I see what you're saying there. Yeah, I missed that. Good point.
So it should say, if this is not from you, then
that's where I'm. Yeah, you've just caught me out. Yeah, because that's where I'm saying to tap on the laptop 3 times and do the dying fly. Yeah, the not there proves the opposite way around. You're right there.
Exactly. So it's the opposite way around. What it should be saying is exactly what you are saying, but it doesn't say that. And
No.
the funny thing is, look at what the tafsirs are saying. They don't pick it up. They are repeating this as though it says what you would expect, but it doesn't
Yeah.
say that.
Good point.
And
Well,
there he
they're
says,
modifying it there, aren't they?
or bring us you see, there they are changing it. So Al-Jalalain is just saying this.
Yeah, they're
So
just
I
changing
thought
it
this
there.
is quite funny. If this is by Allah, then shower us with stones. No, that's not what they want to say. They want to say the opposite. So here's
Yeah.
one sentence, which in my eyes is very clearly a scribal error where somebody missed out the knot.
Yeah, and he's trying to explain it, as you say here, if you look at this, in return for our denial of it. I mean, that's not what the Quran says, but that's how he's interpreting it. Presumably, he also saw that there's problems with that. Just want to see if any of the other guys say anything. I mean, he's always long, and you never know how many verses he's doing here. Again, that's a long story here. We're just looking for something about that the commentators revealed, blah, blah, blah. If this is indeed the truth from thee, then rain stones upon painful doom. So what was, yeah, so this guy's,
Just copying.
yeah, so this one's just a copy there again. And so this was revealed, but Allah would not punish them whilst whilst thou wast with them. In other words, probably, maybe Muhammad was with them. But again, I think they're just trying to come up with something there at this stage, because that does certainly look a little odd.
So I thought this was very, very strange, that this would be in the Quran. So if the Quran is by Allah, then we need to be killed.
The thing is, if you look at verse 33, which you're going to, may I read verse 33 from the Yusuf Ali, which is why I came to my conclusion, because it says there, but Allah was not going to send them a chastisement whilst you were amongst them, nor was he going to send it whilst they could ask for pardon. So that's where I came up with my, it's almost like the double bluff.
Yeah. You're right, Thunder, you're right. It's a scribal error. The scribe in 32 simply missed a word. Okay, that's it. If you insert there, if it was not authored by Allah, then you can shower us with stones. And then it makes sense. But if you are there not while they are repenting, then everything makes sense. So this is another one of those small little mistakes which shows that the Quran is definitely man-made. Anyway, so I made it into but not if you're there and not while they're repenting. So, and then 34 is, but why not when they turn people away from the holy mosque? Its custodians are the righteous who don't know. I'm sorry, this is what I read.
But the thing is at this moment in time, what is the location of the sacred mosque?
We don't know. That's a good point also. We don't know when this was revealed. I'm using the standard narrative now, okay? Not what I think actually happened, but the standard narrative. We don't know.
What do you, may I ask, what if you're saying what you think, so what is your thoughts on this?
No, in reality, this was written 100 years later in Damascus.
Yeah.
And the Holy Mosque was in Jerusalem. Mecca was nowhere on the map yet. They hadn't invented it yet. Anyway, so Rob, can you just bring up again? I'm not talking shit, okay? Because this is so amazingly wrong. This is so amazingly human that it cannot be missed by any Muslim. If you go sentence 34, and if you go, maybe let Thunder read it.
I'll bring it up again. One sec for me. There we go. Which one?
34. Yusuf Ali, go for it, Thunder.
34. But what plea have they that Allah should punish them when they keep out? So should not punish them when they keep out men from the sacred mosque, and they are not its guardians. No men can be its guardians except the righteous, but most of them do not understand.
What the fuck is this? How can accept the righteous who don't understand? How can you be righteous if you don't understand? See, because this is what I put there. It's custodians are the righteous who don't know. But this does not make sense. This is totally illogical. You cannot be a custodian, you cannot be righteous if you do not know.
Yeah, but maybe they could argue that what he's speaking about is not the righteous, but everybody else. But it's certainly,
Yeah.
even if that were the case, the sentence or the way it's written is poorly constructed. It's ambiguous at best.
It's almost like they're saying no man can be his guardian except the righteous, but most of them don't understand. What it's saying is most of them don't understand. To be its guardians, you have to be righteous. That's probably the way it should be read.
Yeah,
most of them
okay.
don't understand.
Yeah, so it's just poorly, at least poorly written or poorly translated. But if you're a Muslim and you're going to claim that it's poorly translated, you're shooting yourself in the foot, because then what the implication of that claim is that people really have to learn Arabic to understand the Quran. If that's the case, anybody who's an English speaker who has not understood Arabic should immediately deconvert, learn Arabic, and then, if they are convinced, become a Muslim, right? And that would disqualify 99% of people on the planet.
Just on that point there, I don't know if it's going to be brought up later on, but I was listening to the Yasser Qadhi rebuttal to Jay Smith and David Wood. I don't know if you guys have listened.
Yeah.
And one of the points, I mean, that is a show that I would love to do in itself, because you mentioned things that we can talk about as well. But there was something he said in there. He was saying these people are not Arabic scholars or Arabic language, and they don't understand the Arabic language, or words, or I paraphrase, but the context to that effect, which is pretty much what you just said now, Robs, that you have to understand the Arabic to understand the text to become a Muslim. Yeah, which is, for me now, is fast becoming like when I said I wanted to do a superhero book, and Muhammad is like the miracle of translation, the miracle of the Arabic language. That's his superpower. This is what Islam is now fast becoming, because it's been torn apart on every level now. The Arabic language is the last bastion, as it were, the last foothold, the last stronghold, the last tower where it can remain with any kind of safety. But that's now slowly being pulled apart. So I thought it was quite interesting that Yasser Qadhi now, the scholar that he is, his only defense now is the Arabic language.
And he's losing heavily. Rob, can you just bring up the sentence again from the corpus? Is that 34? Yeah. Now, if I look at Sahih, or it doesn't matter which one, then we look at Sahih, why should Allah not punish them while they obstruct? If I go to the corpus, but what for them that should not punish them, Allah, while they hinder people from Al-Masjid al-Haram? Yusuf Ali, but what have they that Allah should not, when they keep out? This means this is always in the present. How can this God punish anyone in the present?
And considering the text was in heaven for millions of years before it came to earth.
Yeah, but now, why should I not punish them while they obstruct? This means now. But
of course it
there is
does.
no Allah that is punishing anybody now, here, today.
Yeah, I think they're going to argue that it was for that particular time, a specific time and place.
Exactly.
But then,
why? How can this be? How can Allah go and punish anybody at that particular place? They can't.
But the thing
Allah
is, Muhammad
does not interfere with the world today. Here, there is no human being that has ever been punished by a God here on this planet.
And the thing is, my point is that this is a book in heaven for many millions of years before it came to earth. Only for it to have a lifespan of, in this context, even if you was to apply it from the very beginning of Muhammad's prophethood to the moment of his death, I'm being generous there. So you give it a maximum of 20 years, which is the maximum that you can ever apply it for. It still has no meaning and is worthless. Which is my argument with the principle of abrogation as well, because even being generous with abrogation, you can only ever give it a maximum of 20 years, a lifespan of any ayah.
Yeah, but then again, my argument is the usual one. If a God knows everything, has all knowledge, and is all powerful, why would this God create people who will obstruct others from keeping them? No, who will obstruct others from going to any kind of mosque? This
But
is the
we
God
this
who created people knowing full well they're going to do that, and then punishes the ones that he created knowing they're going to do that. So he's punishing people for his own incompetence.
but the thing is, we've discussed so many times now on the show that when we get to these points where the Quran and Islam is clear about predestination. This is not a case of Allah knowing that this is going to happen. This is Allah actively involved in making it happen. Because all you've got to
Exactly,
do
exactly.
go to is things like coitus interruptus, or where the angel comes down and takes a person's soul out, or when the angel is going to write down whether they're going to have a good life or a bad life. All those texts, when you extract them all and put them down on one side and you read them all, the context is predestination. So Allah's punishing you for something that He's caused you to do in the first place.
No excuse, exactly. Okay, 35, their false prayer is getting them punished. That's pretty easy, even if they spend propaganda money. It's quite strange, quite weird, but what the hell? Allah will chuck them into hell. If you go and do that, you'll go to hell, okay? Unless they cease and desist. Again, we can use the same logical whatever, what we just decided. And then fight them. This is the religion of peace. Fight them until only Islam is left. Fight them until only Islam is left. Now, that for me is the most destructive sentence in the entire Quran, because it's very, very unambiguous.
And at what point is that not hate speech? This
Yeah.
this is interesting because this verse here applies to what I said. Maybe I'll read it next week or whenever you want me to. The article by Daniel Greenfield that I was reading earlier on today, and his summary of Islam.
So this is a sentence to remember, because there is no peace and mercy and nothing here. Fight them until not there is oppression and the religion is all for it, Allah. That's it.
Can I read the Yusuf Ali translation if I may? Because it says there, and fight them until there is no more tumult or oppression, and the religion becomes Allah's in its entirety. Professee, surely Allah sees all that they do. So when it says that in Allah's in its entirety, I like to understand, are they talking about in that period of time? Are they talking about in that peninsula? Or are they talking about a global jihad?
Well, for me, it's global.
Absolutely, it has to be, because if Allah created the world, then the context would be that the whole globe has to be Allah's,
the whole universe.
Allah's religion. Yeah.
So for me, this is like the death knell to anybody who says it's the religion of peace. This is not in any way being defensive or being passive or waiting until somebody attacks you. No, this is fight them until it's all for Allah. And that is until only Islam is left. And if they stop, Allah will notice. Well, then everything is for Allah. So this is, for me, I don't know how more clear you can get this, that this is not a religion of peace, that this is not a godly book. This is a man-made book to recruit people, soldiers, warriors to go and fight in the name of this caliph who says, well, you're actually fighting in the name of Allah. And that's it. So, yeah. I think that's very clear. And then sentence 40, if they turn away, I don't know from what, I don't know. If they turn away, Allah is a protector and helper. Yeah, great. You see, it's the jing and jang, and if fight them until everybody is dead, until everybody agrees there's only one God, yes, 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 yes. And then if you do that, then everything is cool. Then you have the peace that has been, talked about so much. You say it doesn't make sense. If they turn away from belief, know that God is your protector. It doesn't make sense. So this is why I put in brackets, from what? Turning away from what? Because it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
But I think it means if they turn away from fighting Allah. I think this is what this is referring to. So there you have it, sentences 31 to 40.
I think
So that means next week.
I think when you consider the word resist, I think in Islam, in Islamic parlance, you're resisting Allah. So by implication, you're fighting Allah, even just by resisting it, not necessarily in a figurative sense, in a literal sense, like in a fight. But if you're resisting Allah in a discussion, or in the way that a Muslim sees it, you're resisting Allah within your heart, within your psyche.
Amazing. Okay, I was hoping that Mustafa would come on because he said that he was going to come on and read something, and this would have been perfect in this point. But I don't know.
Well, that's me.
Made it.
That was me. Was it me? Was it the book by Daniel Greenfield
Hang
about
on.
Islam?
Oh, that was you. I thought.
Yes.
Sorry, I was because there was something from Mustafa earlier, so I thought this was still Mustafa. No, you changed it to you. Okay, now I see it. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah.
So, would you like me to read the article?
Please, if you make it, but not the whole thing.
Well, you tell me when to stop. I mean, it's not a long article, but I'll read it anyway. But Daniel Greenfield, it came to my notice probably about 12 years ago. He wrote a booklet about called 10 Reasons to Abolish the United Nations. And I'm not going to suggest I was looking for the book. I came across it accidentally, or the booklet accidentally. But I read it and I was fascinated by the arguments he presented with reference to the abolition of the United Nations. He gave 10 accounts of what's taken place in history and how the United Nations proved to be a barking dog with no teeth. I hadn't continued with any of his publications or articles since. I got into him recently again, and I came across this article headed, "Why Islam is a Religion of War." So I'll just read the article. It says there, it starts off with, "He it is who has sent his messenger Muhammad with guidance and the religion of truth, Islam, to make it victorious over all religions, even though the infidels may resist." That's taken from Koran 61, verse 9. Subheading is, "Islamic violence is a religious problem." And it continues, "Islam derives meaning from the physical supremacy, so war becomes an act of faith. To believe in Islam is to have faith that it will conquer the entire world. And to be a true Muslim is to feel called to aid in that global conquest, whether by providing money to the jihadists or to become a jihadist. The fulfillment of Islam depends on the subjugation of non-Muslims, so that violence against non-Muslims must become the essence of religion. When Hamas states killing Jews is worship that draws us close to Allah, or the ISIS rapists tell Yazidi girls that rape draws them close to Allah, they really mean it. They are not perverting a great religion as our politicians claim. They are living it. Everything they do is based on the Quran, the body of Islamic law, and the great history of Islam. What the Ten Commandments are to Jews, or the resurrection of Jesus for the Christians, the physical dominance of Islam is to the Muslims. It is the basis and fulfillment of his faith. Jihad is the force that gives Islam meaning. It is the deepest expression of faith. To its followers, the validity of Islam is directly connected to its physical supremacy. As followers of the purported final revelation to mankind, Muslims not only have the obligation to conquer and subjugate the rest of the world, their religion is meaningful to the extent that they can carry out the work begun by Muhammad. The jihadis who massacre non-Muslims are missionaries of their faith. Anything that suggests Islam is not absolutely superior becomes a blasphemy. When Muslims explode into outbursts of violent rage over seemingly petty things like a cartoon or a video, it is because to them, any loss of faith for Islam is the worst kind of blasphemy because it challenges its supremacy. Truth and power in Islam are identical. It is not a religion of the oppressed, but of the oppressors. Muhammad's prophecies are validated by his conquests. The truth of Islam is seen in the expansion of Islam. When Muslims succeed in killing non-Muslims, They prove the truth of their religion. That is why Muslim terrorists shout, Allahu Akbar, Allah is greater. The old Mohammedan taunt aimed at Jews was then directed at Christians, Hindus, Buddhists, and all the world's religions. By killing their non-Muslim victims, the Muslim proved that Allah was greater than their gods. Islam is not only a tribal and materialistic religion, but it's closely linked to the honor-shame code of its Arab originators. Islam is not primarily an inward spiritual experience, but an outward expression of tribal honor. Its religious expression is the upholding of the honor of Islam, and its expansion in the same exact ways is the honor and expansion of the tribe that are upheld. That is why Islam suffers from the classically tribal obsession of protecting honor by controlling women so that the blood of the tribe is not polluted by outsiders. That is why it is obsessed with any insult, real or imaginary, to Muhammad, its theological tribal founder, and why it must continually expand its territory through the conflict so that the tribe grows and so that the surplus sons do not stay behind to fight each other over tribal territory. This is true of Syria on a much larger scale. Forcing non-Muslims into submissive position affirms the truth and power of Islam. By causing infidels to lose face, the Muslim fulfills the Quranic verse which promises that Allah had sent Muhammad to make Islam supreme over all religions. By contrast, when Islam loses face, an act of blasphemy has been committed, which can only be righted religiously by killing the non-Muslims, thereby forcing them to lose faith and once again affirming the physical superiority of Islam. This creates a cycle of violence which is not the result of Christian or Jewish oppression, but the need for Muslims to validate the truth of their faith by oppressing non-Muslims. To coexist with non-Muslims is blasphemy for a Muslim. When his Quran proclaims, "Do not take the Jews and Christians for friends," Quran 5:51, Muhammad's final command was to ethnically cleanse the Jews and Christians of the Arabian Peninsula. ISIS sees itself as completing the work that he began. Islam does not coexist. For its followers, its truth can only be found in conquering non-Muslims. Whereas most religions can... Sorry, did you say something there, Stops?
No, I thought you finished. Yeah.
No, whereas most religions can accept being in the inferior position because of their fundamental faith in spiritual rather than material, Islam has little to it but the material. Even its paradise exists in the form of a sort of physical pleasures that its followers crave. Fancy robes, exquisite banquets, golden couches, and of course that famed appeal to the dedicated jihadist, curvaceous versions, and an overflowing cup. Islamic heaven is a grossly exaggerated version of the kind of loot that Muhammad's followers expected to find by following him in the first place: gold, jewels, silk, spices, and young girls. The gang of throat slitters who accompanied Muhammad on his massacres across the region were given a religious incentive that would transcend death. Even if they died in battle and would not live up to enjoy the jewels of the overflowing cups and girls, the Quran promised it to them in heaven anyway. The gang of robbers escaped slaves and ambitious desert rats trailed after Muhammad across sand dunes, their mind filled with the promise of rich loot from the caravans that they were raiding. And in the feverish heat, the idea that they would receive even better loot if they were to die in battle, making death preferable to life, would seem more plausible. I can go on. There's only a little bit more.
No, because now it's going more and more examples. I think where when I stopped it, I think that would have been a perfect position or place to stop, because it sort of summarized it, and then now it's just giving example after example.
It does conclude, though. It does. There is a conclusion, but what I'll do, I'll leave this one there. I want to conclude on another one, if I may. This one's very brief, and I thought this one was quite fitting because it goes with the show in as much that I've said time and again that Islam is defined by the Quran and Hadith, not by Muslims. And this is the article that actually led me to this article by Daniel Greenfield. He wrote a short paragraph I'm just pulling it up now. It says every devout Muslim is an Islamist. Islam is not a personal religion. It is a religion of the public space. A moderate Muslim would have to reject Islam as a religion of the public space, as theocracy and that secularism would be rejected, would be a rejection of Islam. Nothing in Islam exists apart from everything else. While liberals view culture and religion as a buffet that they can pick and choose from, it is a single integrated system. If you accept one part, you accept the whole. Once you accept any aspect of Islam, you must accept its legal system. Once you accept that, you must accept its governance. And once you accept that, you lose your rights, which is pretty much what we've been saying from the start. Islam is defined by the Quran and Hadith, and what the public realm is, or what the public realm says by politics and other religions and other people who are non-Muslims who say that it's a religion of peace, haven't a clue of what Islam is really about unless you read its text and look at its history.
Well, there seems to be a person who has looked into Islam, who has an understanding, and who is able to, eloquently describe it and sort of summarize it, picking out bits and pieces which are symptomatic. Because you always have to, because I disagree a little bit with you, because I say, have you heard of the BBB, the belief, the behavior, and the belonging? This is what you have in street gangs, this is what you have in different areas, and this is symptomatic for Islam as well. That's why I call it a cult more than anything else, because it has its own rules, its own everything, its own system, everything is there. And it's like belonging to a group of people, which are a group and a group and a group, who don't really care about the outside world. And they say, well, if you want to come and join us, you need to go and adhere to our rules, and we are gradually going to take over everything anyway. This is how I see Islam today. So what this guy is doing is actually summarizing this and saying, yeah, that's the way it is because, and then he brings all these examples. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I'm hoping that he'll write a book that expands on that.
Wow.
So that's what I found for this week.
Thank you very much for that.
No
Who is this guy?
Daniel Greenfield.
And he is?
He's a reporter that I came across, like I say, about 10, 15 years ago. I stumbled on a book that he did called 10 Reasons to Abolish the United Nations. I don't really know that much about him.
Yeah.
But
okay, if anybody wants to read up on this, we have Maverick here. Too bad for you lot. I don't know what that is. You only find self-defense in the Quran because they got persecuted. Yeah, that's what we just read in the Quran. Thank you very much for that. Well, sorry, go somewhere else because that's bullshit. Okay, Mr. Rob, Mr. Speakers, sir,
Yep.
Mr. Speakers, can you bring up the video?
Sure can. 1 second.
Because this is going to be the entertainment segment for today, because this guy is always funny. And I don't think that TJump is going to stay serious, because TJump is actually, he's got a great sense of humor. So I think he's going to be chuckling more than anything else. Oh, this is part 2. Okay, I haven't even seen this.
But this was the one we were asked to do. So if you private message me saying, hey, can we do a review? We're doing it on here rather than the Speaker's Corner UK channel. So let's see how far we get. We've got over an hour. I'm sure Thunderous will have plenty to say here as well. So I think sit back, grab your popcorn, and let's see where we go.
If you could actually like read my lips and tell me what I was saying without hearing me, I'd be pretty impressed. That would be a miracle.
Yep.
All right. We definitely have people in the chat. So just wait a few minutes, let them say stuff. Your camera's wobbling a bit.
Oh, you know what? Like, fasten. There you go.
All right. I think we're live. So do you want to give like an introduction to what you wanted to talk about?
Sure. Okay. So
just to clarify, the title is set for are there any scientific errors? So
well, yeah, I guess we had a brief discussion on why the Quran is a scientific miracle. So what I will be bringing is evidence and proofs showing why the Quran is a scientific miracle. We just had a brief discussion, last time. And so, but for sure, in the future, I'll schedule a time with you where we could challenge, does the Quran contradict science like the Bible does?
And could you clarify what scientific miracle means? Because atheists, that doesn't mean anything to atheists. Normally, it would be like a scientific error or a fact or something, or like a prediction. You claiming that Quran makes scientific predictions. That's the.
Well, what I mean by scientific miracle is that when you look at the scientific data in the Quran, and we try to explain, well, how is it that there's one man who's the author of all of the scientific information? We cannot come up with a natural explanation for that. Like, oh, well, it might have been a coincidence. Maybe he borrowed from some other source. Maybe it was plagiarized. Nothing, as far as a human explanation of what humans can do, explains what we see. So therefore, it has to be a supernatural explanation. So,
no, that's not the case. Let's assume for a moment that it was in fact the case that we couldn't explain it. Then that is in fact where we're at. We cannot explain it. That doesn't get you to, well, the option is if humans didn't do it and it's unexplained, then therefore it must be from Allah. No, that's not the case.
Can I just recommend, because I've seen the Nadir debate many times with other people, and for anybody that wants to watch something more humane, something more with less blood in it and less violence, can I suggest you watch a baby seal getting clubbed? Because this is going to end up bloody and messy. This is going to end messy. This is going to make your buttocks clench and your toes curl. This is going to get brutal. Let's continue.
Only one which makes sense.
Well, that definition doesn't quite work because of the. Do you know what the problem of underdetermination is in science?
Oh, go ahead, tell me.
It means that there's infinitely many ways to explain anything, always, no matter what. So all evidence can always have a natural explanation, no matter what. Like the entire universe could have been created by magical bunnies, 2 magical bunnies, 3 magical bunnies, 4 magical bunnies. Could have been created 5 seconds ago, 6 seconds ago, 7 seconds ago. So there's always infinitely many ways to explain anything. So it doesn't count just to say there isn't a natural explanation, because there always is.
Okay, well, let's see if we can find a natural explanation, because I can tell you there isn't. And so let's do 2 minutes back and forth. Do you want me to keep time? And
I think if somebody were to, and stops at a discussion here, he tends to want to. This guy tends to want to dictate how the debate will go, and I think in my experience of watching this guy, I mean, I wouldn't waste my time here. But if one were to have a discussion, you've got to be in control here, because the moment you give it up, you never get it back again. And so this whole 2-minute thing, as you'll see, it just doesn't work. Because there's too much shotgunning going on here. I think it's claim for a claim, or, let's discuss this or that, or whatever the case is. But a 2-minute thing very rarely works in any sort of longer discussion.
Well, everybody can see it when we are doing these reviews here, where 2 minutes is sufficient to open up a can of worms, where you need like 15 minutes to bring all those worms back and put them in the can. And unfortunately, this is exactly what he does. He has so many different issues that you can bring up in 2 minutes, which you can never, ever hope to bring back in a 2-minute time span. But this is
so I think the best way to do it with somebody like this is to say, make one claim and we discuss that, and then we'll decide when we move on. And you'll notice as well, he'll want to move on when he thinks he's made the point and he doesn't think the other guy has said anything. He will try to dictate when it's time to move on as well. So just notice how he tries to control the pace and the conversation.
We'll show you that, there only is one explanation, and that is supernatural.
Sure, if you can disprove the problem of underdetermination, I would definitely be impressed.
Problem.
Go for it.
We can definitely do that. And so I'll tell you what, let's
You see, that's the sort of comment that's a bit like we were sort of having a bit of a giggle about it not too long ago with hijab, right? When the principle of sufficient reason was put to him, and he said, "Yeah, I accept sufficient reason and necessary reason." And he also said something like, I accept the principle of sufficient reasons. In other words, he had no clue what this term was, but he was too embarrassed to ask about it. And the fact that this guy just says, yeah, sure, no problem, I can overcome the problem of underdetermination, as if it's like a trivial thing. He tells us he has no clue, even when Tom explained it to him, and obviously he didn't go into a detailed explanation, but he still has no clue as to what that was. It was completely in one ear and out the other, or just over his head. And I think with people like this, it's if you're doing it for the audience, but don't expect him to take on like a concept like that, right? It's just like he's got this little box, nothing goes outside of this box. He doesn't venture outside, and nothing penetrates either. So it's really just to expose his sort of stupidity and dogmatism.
Each of us keep our own time, maybe.
I usually don't speak for 2 minutes, so it's usually not a problem.
Right. That gives me the advantage.
Yep, go for it.
So let me go ahead. Okay. So let me start with the first piece of evidence. So one thing I want to make it clear is that, you know, it's not just based on one piece of evidence. It's if you look at the evidence collectively, then we're going to ask that question. So the first thing I want to point out to you about the Quran is, number one, some great things scientifically is the Quran, from a scientific point of view, is responsible for saving millions of children from fetal alcohol syndrome. The Quran condemns alcohol. Now, there's many beliefs, religions out there which do actually condemn alcohol. But what's special about the Quran, it has something which others don't have, and that is implementation. Let me see if I can just share my desktop over here. So what do I mean by that? It means
you could actually, if you...
Did you want to say something? I heard somebody sighing.
No,
Oh, okay.
this is the most. I've never heard this argument before.
Okay.
That alcohol protecting the fetus. This is just, it's obscene.
Well, presumably what he's going to do, I mean, I don't remember this, but presumably the idea is if nobody drank any alcohol, then there wouldn't, it wouldn't have an effect on unborn children. And so it does have an effect on some unborn children. And therefore, if the Quran bans this, then this is something that is scientific.
I've never heard this argument before.
And I can say it in like 30 seconds, right? Or 20 seconds. But let's see what he does here.
Open another window and join the same site. You can have the window open and your face at the same time if you want that way.
Oh, let me see if I can do this here real quick. I tell you what, let me try sharing to my desktop over here. Just give me 1 second here. Oh, you know what? You know what? There you go. Let me try this again. I think there is a. Hold on a second. Just give me 1 second. I'm having a little technical difficulty here.
Sounds a bit like you stopped.
Okay, here we go. Oh, if you expand it and make it full screen, it doesn't come up under application window. Okay, I just figured it out. Okay, so going back to what I was saying.
Yep, there you go.
So, I'll just do 1 minute real quick over here. You're not going to find 5-year-old kids drinking beer in Islamic history because the Quran clearly condemned alcohol. Now, researchers have pointed out that Muslim women are 50 times less likely than the average person to give alcohol to give birth to.
Rob, just
He said that you don't get 5-year-old children drinking alcohol. Whether you ban alcohol or not, you still don't get 5-year-old children drinking alcohol. And second of all, that might not happen in Saudi Arabia because you ban alcohol, but you certainly get in a crime where 5-year-old children are serving alcohol in Islamic heaven.
Yeah, presumably that doesn't have a bad effect in heaven. It's magical alcohol.
The other thing is, and Muslim apologists love smuggling this in, the Quran clearly bans alcohol. No, it does not. I don't know why people always do this. I've seen this millions and millions. Okay, not always and not millions, but I've seen this time and again that Muslims smuggle this in. No, it doesn't mention alcohol and it doesn't mention that it's banned. So don't talk shit.
But also,
by the way, you know that you can. Okay, the word that because I came across this like 2 or 3 days ago, I realized if you use khamr and you need to interpret it, whatever clouds or covers the mind is what should be avoided. Well, they go and they interpret this as being alcohol. Well, I can go and say, actually, no, it's talking about prayer. So you should not go and pray because it also covers the mind, because you go into a trance-like state when you do these repetitive movements like what you see the Jews and Muslims do. So I can equally go and say what clouds the mind is prayer. So now show me that I am wrong if I say that the Quran tells you to avoid prayer. You cannot do it because you can equally say prayer was this, and therefore this. Everything that applies to the word, what they use alcohol, I can also do with prayer. You can't argue against it.
Well, I think the one thing you'd probably need to establish stops just to avoid them trying to sidestep it in a sense is getting them to acknowledge that any clouding of the mind is negative or is only certain things. And if it's only certain things, how do they establish that? What's the criteria? Because I think you would have to get them to acknowledge that any clouding of the mind, and then you could bring in like a counterexample like that, because otherwise they could escape by saying, no, but there's certain clouding of the mind that is good and some that's bad. Well, okay, how do you establish which is which? What's the criteria?
That's a good point. It's the presentation also comes with it, the sequence, absolutely.
Yeah.
To a fetal alcohol baby. Now, this is just evidence number one, and my time is up, so I'll go ahead and give it over to TJ.
Okay.
Okay, so all he's got here that he's highlighted is that the Quran's basically suggested that people shouldn't drink alcohol, and they were forbidden from prayer from being intoxicated, and finally they declared it's a satanic act and totally forbidden. We haven't seen this thing about the fetal alcohol syndrome, but let's assume that there is some article out there that says that. We don't need the Quran for that in any case, but presumably so. But so it's not a scientific miracle. All he's saying is, well, okay, if we were the most charitable we could possibly be, all he's really saying is, well, the Quran makes this suggestion or this prohibition, and that seems to match what we understand about having certain effects. But the fact that the Quran does that doesn't mean that it's a scientific miracle, because other people can notice that effect and not drink because of that effect, and we notice it precisely because we are looking at evidence in the world, and we're suggesting that evidence shows us that something's wrong. Doesn't matter whether the book says so or not. I could say it's right, he could say it's wrong. Until some evidence comes up, that's when we know that it's the case.
And I've discussed exactly this point with a Muslim female, and she also brought up this point, and I went and looked at this, and I said, and it's funny, there must be some sort of a, I don't know, depository or whatever, where they find all this stuff, because it's wrong. Because as soon as you go and look at the numbers, it is nowhere near this. This is somebody exaggerating, taking things out of context, adding this and adding that. It's nowhere near. This is totally ridiculous what he's bringing up here.
Can I just add on that? I'm not an expert on a woman being pregnant. I know how to get a woman pregnant, but that's as far as my knowledge goes. Being 52 and single with no children.
Well,
The point I would like to make is, the point I'm trying to make is, isn't anything that a woman consumes during pregnancy, I mean, alcohol is one thing that could possibly lead to damage to the baby being damaged in some kind of way, but surely anything in excess that a woman consumes during pregnancy could also likewise lead to the fetus being damaged in some way or another, or being deprived or something. So it wouldn't necessarily just limit itself to alcohol. A woman consuming anything or abusing any substance can likewise damage, surely.
I'm sure, because apparently my father told me that my mother was crazy for marzipan.
But in excess, that's not. I mean, surely a child could be born with some kind of deficiency, or maybe.
Am I deficient because I like marzipan?
Well, no, but what I mean is, if, for instance, any kind of deficiency of the immune system or whatever, that's a product of a woman consuming during pregnancy, a consumable that is going to damage the fetus. That's what I'm saying. So I think the point Islam is trying to say, well, Islam bans alcohol, therefore when a woman drinks alcohol it's going to damage. But there are other things that if it can damage the fetus, then why is it Islam did not mention these other things that can damage the fetus?
And the reanimator is making a very good point. There are other things that are much more dangerous, which the Quran does not condemn, because having sex with children or with slaves or things like that, I mean, there are a lot of things that you could put in there instead of having to, really strain the interpretation here to come up with this idea that because alcohol is not there, and therefore we are saving lives. I mean, there's a lot of other things that you could be saving much easier.
Okay, so I'm still trying. So you defined a miracle as something that has no scientific explanation, and your first example was that there is less fetal alcohol syndrome in Islam. That has a perfectly reasonable naturalistic explanation. The people in Islam have less cases of drinking. There's no need, no explanation there that requires anything non-natural.
Do you want to? Okay, I guess.
Yeah, I don't talk for 2 minutes. I usually just bring up one point.
Yeah, okay. Well, we'll talk up to 2 minutes. Let's just do that.
Yeah,
okay, so let me just quickly answer you. So I totally agree with you. And so what you're doing, you're actually attacking a straw man argument.
Wait. Sorry, just to interrupt. So remember, you defined a miracle in that way, right? So
TJ, just to go over the format, you got to let me speak uninterrupted for up to 2 minutes, and I don't interrupt you for up to 2 minutes.
Well, I need clarification here. So this is not. You defined a miracle as a thing that cannot have a naturalistic explanation, right?
Natural explanation.
And the first example you gave was there's less fetal alcohol syndrome.
Yes, let me explain that. See, we are in agreement. If you just look at this one particular argument alone, it's hypothetically possible that it could have a natural explanation. Maybe we could come up with a lot of different ideas. So this, of course, we are in agreement. This is not some kind of miracle which doesn't have a natural explanation. But this is just evidence number one. But when we start looking at the totality and we start looking at all
his face. What is this evidence number one of? If you've agreed that it's got or potentially has a naturalistic explanation, then what exactly is it evidence of? And this is what Tom is sort of probably wincing at here.
pieces of evidence, then we're going to ask that question: does it have a natural explanation? So we are in agreement that this we could hypothetically, it's possible some human being can do that.
Okay, can you give me like the cumulative case? Give me all of the facts that are like what are required that don't have.
Okay, so let's move on to.
Okay, so he's trying to make a cumulative case. Hey, all these things in the Quran, if we bring this all together, it's highly unlikely, or he had a much stronger claim in the beginning, which is that it's impossible that a human could come up with this, right? That's the claim. But he is conceding that any one claim on its own, he's begrudgingly conceding that any one claim on its own could have a naturalistic explanation. I mean, the way he's saying it is like hypothetically could be the case. I think it's straightforwardly obvious that it can be the case. You observe something happens, you correlate it with drinking alcohol. This is not magical, and people probably did it way before Muhammad and certainly did it better afterwards. But the reason why is because we could observe the result, right? It doesn't require God telling you to do so. And if God tells you to, then it's just coincidental that it in fact happens to. What about the things, as other people have pointed out, that he either doesn't tell you to do or does tell you to do that have a negative effect? Well, now you're in a bit of a problem.
Bullet point list them so that we all know beforehand. Okay.
So I'm going to go ahead and take my 2 minutes. I can spray you, I guess, with all the other points to go very quickly. So I'm going to share my desktop here real quick again. So going back, I'm going to take 2 minutes. Going back to this one point, it's not just that the Quran has saved millions of children from fetal alcohol syndrome, but there's many good things as well. For example, we know, like in the case of American Indians and other than them, some indigenous people, they can't have any alcohol, and we have entire reservations of Indians, people who are suffering from alcoholism, and as well as all the crime related. So it's not just FAS. So from a scientific point of view, at least this is what the scientists did point out, that the Quran went in there, and they were actually not even researching.
Nadir, I'm sorry, I gotta interrupt you again. You gotta concise your points down. Like, could you just say,
okay,
here is
TJ,
my argument.
You can't interrupt me for 2 minutes. That's
Nadir,
fine.
I'm gonna mute you. I'm gonna mute you again if this continues. You have to be direct to the point. I need to be able to follow the point to understand what you're saying. So just give me a list. Here are all of the facts, just the facts that cannot be explained naturally. Just give me the list of the facts and nothing else. No other information, just the bullet point list of the facts.
Okay, but TJ, in order for us to have a fair debate, you have to allow me to speak uninterrupted for up to 2 minutes, and I'll allow you to speak uninterrupted for up to 2 minutes.
I don't care if it's fair.
I agree with TJ here, right? You've got to take control. You do a point at a time, because otherwise he's just going to ramble on. Exactly. And it's very difficult. It's easy to make claims. It's much harder to rebut them or refute them, because you can make a claim in plus add a little bit extra on to the end of it in 20 seconds, and a rebuttal to that can take 3, 4, maybe 5 minutes to do, and especially if you have to go look them up or ask for evidence. So I think he's absolutely right. You're not going to and because he was hoping he'd give him these 5 things or whatever the case is, and then you can go back and go, but he's not doing that. He's giving it and then adding a lot of extra onto the end, and then it becomes just unwieldy.
Okay, you said what I wanted, yeah.
I don't need it to be fair. So I just need you to answer my questions.
Then I can't help you.
That's fine too. I'm happy with that too, but I need you to answer my questions because I make them very, very clear so the audience can understand.
We'll answer your questions.
Could you list all of the things that cannot be explained in accumulation? Just the bullet point, because I'm trying to write them down. I don't need all the extra facts. I don't care about other Indian societies. Just give me your evidence, nothing else.
Okay, fine. I will do that for you, but I was just finishing my first point, TJ, and I was going to do that for you before you interrupted me. There was no need for you to interrupt me.
I need to do it before you go on the diatribe about irrelevant information.
Okay. But before we go forward, before we move forward with that, TJ, we got to have a format here that we can both agree to. And I thought we just agreed that we will speak uninterrupted for 2 minutes, okay? And then I understand there might have been some things that were confusing, I said, and that's totally fine. You can ask for those clarifications in your 2 minutes. Okay?
No, that's not. Sorry, Nadir, that's not how this is going to work. I'm going to tell you, you need to say this, and then that's what you need to say. So tell me exactly the evidence. No diatribes, just the bullet points. Exactly, just the argument, nothing else.
If you need, I can agree with that. I can agree with this, TJ. If you need a clarification on something, you can interrupt me then. Okay, I will make that one exception to the rule. Okay. So let me go ahead and list the other points very quickly.
Yes.
And
slowly so I can type them.
Oh yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah, no problem. So there's more good scientific value in the Quran other than fetal alcohol syndrome. I'm going to just take 2 minutes. I won't take more than that. So let's look at the other points for TJ. So we also see that the Quran corrects the scientific errors of the Bible, which has led to just undue suffering, which has caused suffering in people's life. For example,
this is crazy.
The Quran corrected the issue.
So he's excluded that. He says we can at a later stage go and talk about the errors that were corrected in the Bible. But today we're not going to do that. Today we're going to talk about different things in the Quran about today. And then he goes and says the first thing, the most important thing is the things, because now what you have to do is you have to go into the Bible and read them, which makes it impossible. So he doesn't actually have a point. All he's trying to make it is more complicated without bringing up the points. Instead of saying point 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, he is now going, well, now we have to go and read the whole Bible to be able to understand it. That's crazy.
But he's also setting himself up as to being some kind of champion but he has to belittle something in order to have a platform to stand on. So by attacking the Bible and using strawmans against the Bible, it's a kind of projection that Islam must be true because we've got something more based on reality than what the Bible says, which in context is really just his misunderstanding, because J. Smith totally destroyed him on that anyway. That being said, he has to belittle the Bible in order to glorify the Quran.
The other thing is that he's obviously forgotten who he's speaking to. It's totally irrelevant to Tom Jump, myself, Stops, or anybody like that. It would be irrelevant maybe to bring up to you, but to us, it's not going to be relevant, right? So this is completely vacuous to us. So I don't know why this is no good for us. He needs to go on to things that we can, because we're not going to defend the Bible. We may not have read those specific parts. You're going to defend the Bible. We're not. So he's got to remember who he's speaking to as well, and not bring up, other points that is not going to be challenged necessarily by, Tom's an atheist anyway.
Of the virginity test. The Bible mandates a virginity test. We could look all throughout history. Christians have suffered from this bogus virginity test. We know from a scientific point of view that there really is no such thing, in the sense that we know from science today that there are people who are born without hymens. They're not going to bleed on a bed sheet. We know these things. We know from a scientific point of view that there are people who rupture their hymen. We know that there are people who have been sexually molested. These people have all been subjugated to a biblical virginity test all throughout history. Well, the great thing from a scientific point of view about the Quran is that it abolishes a virginity test. But not only that, we see other, the misery doesn't end here with the New Testament.
Rob, just
see from the Bible.
This, I can't believe, this is unbelievable. This guy is so unbelievably thick. He was just told, I don't know how many times, I am not interested in the whole history. Just give me your points so I can write them down so we can address them bit by bit. And he's doing the exact opposite. He's doing exactly what he was told not to do, and he's doing it just to get. This is unbelievable, really. I don't understand how TJump is actually not screaming at him and saying, listen, I just told you what not to do and you're doing it. That's crazy. I don't know.
It said that, divorce is only in the case of adultery.
I'm getting lost, Nadir. It seems like all of this is just the one point. You correct scientific errors in the Bible. You could have just said that one sentence and then stopped and then go to the next point. So I don't know. Like, none of this seems to be a further point. You're just adding on to the one point.
Okay, I'm just going to give you the other point here.
Okay.
We also see from a scientific point of view, from the issue of divorce. Divorce, the Bible only.
Is this just another example of correct scientific error? Because I'm trying to where is the next point? I'm trying to this is just an example of. I don't need more examples. You already said that point. What's the next point?
Okay. So now we're seeing that from a scientific, to sum up what I'm saying here.
He must have been listening to you.
Yeah, this is. I don't understand it. I'm biting my keyboard here. I would have slapped him. I would have said, listen, are you able to understand like normal English? This is, and he says, are you going to bring another example? No, I'm not going to bring another example. Well, here's another example. This is crazy.
Oh, he's obviously got a script and he's got some stuff he's reading off, and he doesn't care who he's speaking to. It's just a chance for him to ramble on.
From a scientific point of view, the Quran has greatly helped humanity, and this is something which we see is actually.
Is this the third point, or is this?
This is a summation of that first point.
Okay, so the first point was fetal. The first point was fetal alcohol syndrome. The second point was correct scientific errors, and then the benefit thing is just a summation of the other two, essentially.
Right.
Okay.
Right now, let me move on to the other issue. I'm going to share my desktop here real quick here, and I'll be very quick for you, and I'll try to be as I hate rambling on, but let's go to so it's not just that Islam did all these things, but we also see that Islam brought the Quran specifically initiated and laid the foundation for a age, what we call the golden age of Islam, an age, what we call basically a scientific revolution.
All right, quickly deal with this one, Stops. As if the Quran did this. What an utter nonsense. If in fact there were people, right, you can't demonstrate that the Quran did that for them. And even if they took inspiration from the Quran, they still went and did everything themselves. You would have to show, or you'd have to prove that it's impossible for people to go and do scientific inquiry without the Quran. Good luck doing that.
Well, there are different. Well, there are problems on different levels here because, number one, there was nothing ever invented or discovered or anything that was significant by a Muslim, with one exception in 1999. But that's it. Second thing is that the people, the polymaths at the time, 1,000 years ago, who did make advancements in the respective fields. You don't know whether they were Muslims. Most of them were not. They've just been sort of taken in because they were paid by the caliph, so they always started in the name of Allah because that's what they had to do to get the money, to be sponsored. And that is what they did. But there's no way that you can tell whether somebody is a Muslim or not. In some places, you definitely know that they were not. The third thing is, what these people are saying was not in any way the basis for the revolution, that what he is saying, for the age of enlightenment or something, or the the French and Italian revolution that happened afterwards, were in no way the basis for these things. That is absolute rubbish.
Cool. Yeah. And if you read the top there, one major factor on how Islamic empire enjoyed such a blossoming of thought comes from the Islam itself. Somewhat, usually many parts of the Islamic holy text place value on education and scientific discovery, regardless of the information's origin. Yeah, right. Show us where it says that. Presumably they're going to go to that ambiguous verse, which I read as saying exactly the opposite. So, interesting that, huh?
We see, let me just a quote to you, facts which are taught inside schools.
Wait, so I don't need examples of scientific revolution. I'm just going to grant all of your points right now. I just need a list of just the points. So
okay,
we have.
But this is also, I want to make sure I educate the audience, and so they understand what I'm talking.
Okay, can you see here? Okay, so this is, if this isn't clear, this is his MO, the modus operandi. He's not really interested in the debate. He's here to preach. He'll ignore anything you say. He'll skirt around it, or he'll superficially look like he's answering it, but he's not, right? The point here is to propagandize to the audience. Regardless of what anybody says, he's not interested. He's not going to take it on board. He's not really going to deal with it. He's there to preach to the audience.
About. I understand that, but let me just show my references for them. I'm just going to read from you from this one, Lumen Learning. This is what is taught in schools all over the world. The Islamic Golden Age started with the rise of Islam and the establishment of the first Islamic state. And so, also, this is from New York Times. Commanded by the Quran to seek knowledge and read nature for signs of the Creator, and inspired by a treasure trove of ancient Greek learning, Muslims created a society that in the Middle Ages was the scientific center of the world. Okay, so that's my final point on that.
Notice that there's like one sentence they cherry picked, and why should we accept what the New York Times says anyway? Right? Show us the references. Why should we accept that? Stops and I think it's exactly the opposite. So how are we wrong and the New York Times is right? You can quote the New York. Anybody can quote the BBC. Who cares about that, right?
This is what he does. He was on the Gin and Tonic show and said, well, I have scientific references here which show X, Y, and Z. I said, well, what is this scientific reference? He says, well, it's CNN.
Yeah. I mean, I think he's a deluded character, right? But he's also one of those that I don't think much penetrates. He's got a little script type thing, as some of the other Dawah guys too, but I think he's even deeper than them, right? I mean, some Muslims have realized that trying to, use science to back up the Quran is a failing enterprise. This guy just hasn't realized it, and probably never will, even if other Muslims told him, right? He would just deny it, right? That's the sort of dogmatism we have here, and lack of nuanced or critical thinking.
Let me show you. So it's not just Muhammad, corrected the scientific errors, saved kids from fetal alcohol syndrome, but it sparked a scientific revolution. Now, my last point, because I want to make it very quickly, and this is going back to the verse which we talked about. Let me end my share. But I'll tell you what, TJ, did you want to just talk a little bit about this?
Well, those are the only 3 points. Were there any more points? There's that.
I was going to mention a verse in the Quran which has 4 scientifically correct statements.
The bees one?
The bees, yes.
Okay,
but did you want to comment anything on this?
Well, my comment is I think you should take a class on how to debate and form an argument. It would be extremely
Maybe we'll bring up the bees one if anybody remembers it or if he references, and we'll have a look ourselves. Right, that's one way to do this.
helpful in
And so should you. Yeah, go ahead.
I actually do this really well with professors. You're doing a very bad job of explaining this. So the correct way.
Let's bury the hatchet and just talk about the point here. Go
Right,
ahead.
right. So I just want to clarify, like what you should have said was, I have 4 points that are inexplicable through natural means. The 4 points in collection are fetal alcohol syndrome, correcting scientific errors in the Bible, scientific revolution, and these 4 facts about the bees. Like if you just said that in 5 seconds, that would have been a great summation of your argument. That's all you needed to say. And so that would have been just some debate advice for you.
Yeah.
All of those can be explained perfectly naturally. There's nothing about them that can't be. So fetal alcohol syndrome, if you ban alcohol and you punish it with severe beatings and death, you can definitely convince people to stop drinking. So sure, that's perfectly explained naturally. Correct scientific errors in the Bible. All newer books can correct the facts in older books. It's very simple. If you have new information, you can write that new information down, which corrects the old information.
And importantly, how do you know that it corrects it? Right through observation in the world around you. You go, oh, well, something said X. We observe that whatever X is either doesn't work or has the opposite effect or whatever. And now we say, okay, well, that's bad if we care about human well-being or whatever the case is. So, it doesn't require any, Allah to tell us these sort of things, because all he's doing is appealing to the natural world anyway. That's what Nadir's doing, but then claiming that somehow this is impossible for humans to come up with themselves. He hasn't remotely done that. I mean, it's just, he's on a different planet, really, in terms of this.
No, this is TJump, Nim.
Yeah, I know, but I'm saying...
No,
yeah.
this was a question.
Sorry?
This was a question by Nim, is this cloud? And I said, no, this is TJump.
Oh, okay.
And bees don't make honey in the stomach either. So this is also the whole claim with the bees is totally bogus.
Yeah.
Supernatural required there. Scientific revolution happened in many societies, happened before Islam. China had a golden revolution. Israel had a golden revolution. The Incan society had a golden revolution. Everyone had a golden revolution. No supernatural required there. And 4 facts about the bees. There's a great video on this. I sent it to you by email. It shows that it's just vague. It doesn't say anything about female bees, so they're too vague to say anything of value, and they're all pretty much common knowledge that was already known by Greece beforehand. So nothing about that is particularly spectacular. All of those facts have occurred before Islam without any supernatural things. Like what about these 4 facts requires the supernatural?
That's a great question, right? What about these things, right? I've just given you naturalistic explanations. Tell me why they're either wrong or less likely or impossible, right?
Okay, great. So basically, I'm going to take my 2 minutes and I'm going to respond to that. So basically, he's attacking straw man. We already...
Okay, great. That's an easy way to sidestep anything. I don't think he actually knows what a straw man is.
Agreed that if now he's attacking a straw man, that if you ban alcohol and just kill them and threaten them with their life, though, yeah, sure, you could achieve that. But this is a study which is done in the West. There is none of that.
What's the straw man? Could you explain the straw man to me? What is it?
You can ask in your 2 minutes, okay? Because I got to.
Okay, so again, this is why you've got to set the criteria in the beginning. You don't give him 2 minutes. I'm going to interrupt you when you make a claim. If you don't substantiate it, I'm going to stop you there and say, hey, substantiate that. I'm just going to let you ramble on it as if, you're making claims that, we've just got to accept. You need to provide the evidence for it. And so, that's at least if anybody else debates this guy, you don't give him 2 minutes. That's just a non-starter, right? Because he can ramble on in 2 minutes that, as, Tom found out, it's very unhelpful. You don't get anywhere, and he's not there for an actually intellectually honest debate. He's there to ramble and, in his mind, to quote unquote educate the audience.
Yeah.
Stop interrupting me.
Cloud is just asking if somebody asked if this was me. Yes, I mean we know that you're not that beautiful, but how could anybody else know? Sorry, carry on.
You have a fallacy, you're going to have to defend it.
That's how debates are. Okay,
yes.
In debate, people accuse each other of fallacies. You took the class, right?
Yes, so I don't care if you accuse me, but you have to actually explain what you mean. I can't just say you committed a Tsukoku fallacy and not explain it. What is the straw man? Because you know what a straw man is, right?
Why don't we do this? Let's do this. 1 minute back and forth.
He doesn't know what a straw man is, right? As soon as somebody doesn't answer like that, and they're not prepared to go, yeah, I know what a straw man is, and show that they know, then you know that they either don't know or they're a bit nervous in case they say it and it's not entirely correct.
That way we can address each other's points.
Why don't you answer my questions? Just
Okay.
just
Because
answer my
I'm-
questions.
I will. Okay, TJ. Okay, look, I've already explained to you, and I will explain to you again.
Nadir, this is my channel. You have to do what I say, or you get kicked off.
Yeah, okay.
So please
All right.
answer my question. You accuse me of a straw man fallacy. What is the straw man?
Okay. You said, yeah, if you ban alcohol and you threaten people and kill them, yeah, you could achieve these type of results. Didn't you say that?
Yes, I did.
Okay, so that is a straw man, which I'm talking about. And I will.
What is that a straw man?
refute your
What do you mean
point.
by straw man? I don't understand how it's a straw man.
Because this is not how the Quran, how it achieved this number of 50%, or I'm sorry, 50 times less than
Okay,
than
I get you.
global
I understand what
average.
you're saying now, but I never
So-
said that's how the Quran did it. Remember, you claimed that this could not
Oh,
be
okay.
explained
And
naturally.
I didn't. Let me clarify. I'm sorry. I made one mistake here. The straw man argument is that you stated when I listed all the things which were the Quran did scientifically. You said, well, there's nothing supernatural about this because the Incas did it, the scientific revolution, well, the Chinese people did it, so there's nothing supernatural there. That was a straw man argument. I'm sorry, I misspoke.
How is that a straw man? Could you
Yeah,
explain?
because I'm not claiming that was supernatural. This is up to what I've pointed out to you right now, that for a scientific revolution to take place, it has to, what the Quran did, this is only a supernatural source could have done it. That's not my argument.
What?
Okay, he's lost. He's totally lost now. He doesn't know who he is. He doesn't know what to do.
Well, I mean, yeah, he's confusing himself here. Presumably, the claim is, if I can try and steel man his terrible argument, presumably the claim is that the Quran inspired, because he had up a document that said Islam, it was through Islam that this happened. So presumably, the Quran or Islam inspired this amazing scientific revolution, or whatever the case is. And the Quran or Islam is inspiration from God. Therefore, God inspired this Islamic revolution. If it were not for Islam, this revolution would not have taken place. That's the argument. And now he's saying it's not a supernatural. Well, what is he claiming then? That they just did it on their own? In which case he's contradicting himself here. Presumably it was supposed to be a supernatural miracle, which is, Islam itself is a miracle, and that inspired these guys to do the scientific discoveries.
Agreeing with you. So you're attacking a straw man. Okay, so no one
If
is
I
saying.
remember correctly, you started off by saying a scientific miracle is a thing that has no natural explanation. That means
No, we're not there yet, TJ. Okay, so you've attacked a straw man argument. So we actually agree on this, that it's hypothetically possible.
That's the other thing, by the way. And he's not the only one. As we know, Shabir Yusuf does this. Yeah, I agree with you. The moment you hear that from somebody like this, and especially if you're already, you are doubtful that they are honest interlocutors, immediately you're going to stop them. What exactly do you claim we agree on? Because I'm not sure that I agree with you. So tell me what it is that we agree on. Because otherwise it sounds like, or he's trying to get across that in fact he's convinced you, or that you're in agreement with him. You've somehow been convinced and you're in agreement. No. What exactly are we convinced of, or that you're claiming that we're in agreement about?
Look at the expression of TJump. This is classic. This
Yeah.
is classic.
Yeah, and I mean it's a good learning experience for him, because you'll come across all kinds of interlocutors. Now, many of the other conversation he has, people, you can disagree with them, but they're trying to put through honest points, and they don't do this sort of tactics, right? But at least he comes across a guy like this, and then he'll be hopefully prepared in the future.
He's not done much with Muslims, has he?
No, he's not that clued up. I mean, it's the same
Not
for anybody,
likely to
really.
again either.
Yeah, but I think this
Well,
Rob
can
is
only
right.
get
This
better,
is
hopefully,
Good learning. Yeah, exactly. Because I don't think he's come across somebody who's this disingenuous so far.
Yeah, but not only that, right? He doesn't know what a straw man is, and he doesn't even remember his own argument, right? I think so. He's totally confused here. Right? But if he throws out, fallacious words that he's heard somehow, and then says you agree with me, somehow that gets him back on track.
To start a scientific revolution like what we see in the Quran, from a natural point
okay.
of view.
I'm lost again. So
Okay.
so you started off by saying
Okay,
scientific.
but
the
you
Quran
asked
is
me
a,
for the straw man. Now I gave you the straw man argument, which you asked me about. So now,
yeah, I still don't understand how it's a straw man because I understand
because
your
I don't,
argument.
that's not my argument.
Right. So let me see if I can. I'm trying to follow your argument. So from what I've heard so far, you said you started off with the Quran is a scientific miracle. A scientific miracle is a thing that has no natural explanation, and then you listed these 4 facts: fetal alcohol syndrome, correct scientific error, scientific revolution, facts of the bees. Now I interpret your argument to be those 4 facts in collectively do not have a natural explanation. Therefore, they are a scientific miracle. Is that your argument?
So the argument which you need to actually refute rather than the straw man
Well,
is
I'm trying to
you
get
need
your argument,
show-
so I'm trying to understand it. That's
so
what's-
this is the argument which you need to refute. So you got one man, one book, which is doing all of these things. That's not humanly possible.
Okay, if it's not humanly possible by his lights, then we don't know how it's possible, but he's not going to accept that there's another option. His claim is if it's not humanly possible, then it must be Allah. Of course, that's a false dichotomy. But let's assume that if we were charitable and say, okay, if we're going to rule out any other sort of alien or other intelligence that could have done all of this, not that any of this is particularly useful or amazing, but let's assume that he thinks it is. He is actually saying that this is how it could have been the case.
It is humanly possible
Rob,
to do
just a second, because there's a question. Have you ever compared Protestant Christianity, Jewish Catholicism with it? Yes, we have, because there are a lot of references in Islam, in the Quran, in the Sunnah, to the previous scripture. So what we have done is we have seen that. That's why Thunderous is here. He's the expert on this. So we have, but we do not make it the main theme to be a comparative or something, a panel or show or anything like that. We try and focus on Islam, but because there are references, we go and address them. This is only on a case by case basis. Sorry, Robert.
Individually, it's humanly possible to ban alcohol, and then actually provide an implementation for it where people actually do follow that injunction and you save all these people. It's humanly possible to do that. It's humanly possible to do each and every one of these points, which I have raised. But for one man to do all of these things, that's not possible.
Okay, what's the argument for that, right? That's the immediate next question. What's the argument for that?
This is the argument.
But this is an argument from ignorance.
Okay, so it's easy.
He doesn't understand how, that's all. He doesn't know.
Correct. Or argument from personal incredulity.
Yeah, but the thing is that it's not Muhammad who wrote this. I mean, you need to look at the claim. This is, Muhammad is just the parrot. Somebody else is feeding the parrot, and that is the Gabriel. And who is feeding Gabriel? Well, this is God. So this is
allegedly
not Muhammad, but it is God who's at the basis of this, reading from his ancient version of the Quran, which has been there for a couple of trillion years. So what he's doing, he's making a total mockery of the whole consequence and all the sequence and everything that you find in the Quran, and the consequence that this is a God at the center of it, and not Muhammad.
Well, that's his claim.
At the same time, one has to consider that that's if you go by the official Islamic narrative, that there was a Muhammad. Because if there wasn't a Muhammad, then these things that the sciences that they allege could have been added at a later date, and sort of like retrospectively, as if to suggest that there were these knowledges by the Arabs was around, it must have come from God because the Arabs wouldn't have known this. Well, 200 years later, as education would have probably gone into the Arab Peninsula, and as they expanded, become better acquainted with other cultures and the learnings of other faiths or religions or philosophies and such, they could have just plagiarized whatever and added that to the Quran 200 years later anyway, and we don't know that.
Yeah, so I think
another
this
question.
sort of, go on.
This guy Nadir debated David Wood in the first segment. He already lost and even asked to change the topic because he could not answer. Well, he ran after 5 minutes. He just folded and said, "Okay, I can't. No, goodbye," and he left. So as soon as you do go and you are strict and you say, "No, I'm not going to allow that," you go and show this and this and this. He can't. As soon as you take him off his script, that this little what drops with his little script there, he's lost and he will run.
He also has this disrespectful attitude where he also debated a guy who was an expert on Hebrew, and he was telling the guy who's an expert on Hebrew that the other guy did not know what Hebrew was, and that he knew more about Hebrew than the guy who'd actually studied Hebrew. So there's one, I think it's on David Wood's channel, where he debated a guy, or maybe on ABN Network. I think it might be on Jay Smith's show or ABN Network. I'll get the link at some point and I'll put it in our chat.
It's not that important. I believe you.
He did a guy, and the thing is with these people, they sit there with a solid gape and disbelief. Is this guy for real? Pretty much what that guy's doing now in the chair, saying, "Is this real? Am I actually having this conversation?"
And that's exactly the point. You don't let up until they can provide an argument that it's impossible. That's exactly the point. Okay,
Bob,
sorry, Rob.
And Bob wrote in a book that if you drink alcohol, we're going to beat you, so don't drink alcohol. And that passage in his book of Bob will cause all the people who follow Bob to stop drinking alcohol because they're going to get beaten if they drink alcohol. Secondly, he looked back at old...
Yeah, I think TJump is now taking on the burden to show this. I think at this stage, for me, I would have said, okay, you've made all these 4 claims. You've conceded that any one of them could have been, somebody could have come up with, but you said all 4 of them together, it's impossible. What's the argument that it's impossible? That's what I want to hear from you now.
Yeah.
And I think Tom is now trying to provide naturalistic, which is one way you can do it. But I think the bigger point here is not being jumped upon at this moment in time, which is how do you establish that those 4 things are impossible for one man to come up with?
He was
Old books that were
frustrated,
written
I think.
1,000 years before, and he said, oh, look, there's so many errors in this book, and I'm going to say, oh, I have new knowledge, so I can correct those errors and say, well, that's factually wrong. Here is the factually correct thing. So now he's correcting errors in old books. And he can say scientific facts like, oh, well, you know what? We should value science and not killing people who have different ideas. Ah, well, that's great. We'll do that. So now they have a scientific revolution in that culture because they stopped killing the people who have other ideas, which is a good thing. And he listed facts about other animals, like, hey, animals leave the nest. Oh, God, surprise. Or, oh, they eat fruit. Ah, wow, super duper. And all these kinds of, facts. He got facts about birds right. 4 facts about birds. Oh, my God. So he caused a decrease in alcohol, a scientific revolution, he corrected errors in an old book, and he got 4 facts right about birds. All of those are possible humanly with no God being there. He just made it up. It's the all praise Bob. So I just gave you an explanation of one guy who could do all of these things purely naturally with no God there.
Okay, you done?
Yes.
Okay, so I think I've successfully argued the point. What he's doing is he's showing how one
Successfully.
He doesn't know what an argument is, actually. I think this is how bad this particular fellow is. It's embarrassing. He doesn't know what an argument is. I've made some claims. I've thrown something up and cherry-picked a few sentences here and there, and I've successfully argued. I mean, which universe is this guy living in? It's clearly not the reality the rest of us are in. It's
Muslim Islamic universe.
I mean, it's a kind of a new low. We've had bad Muslim apologists that we've reviewed in the past, but there seems to be a new low, like a delusional low, right? Doesn't even realize how ridiculous he sounds.
one person can do these things individually.
Wait, no,
Sure.
Bob did all those
Now,
things.
Hold on, DJ, let me finish my point.
Well, just to clarify, my
Well,
argument was that Bob did all 4 of these things at the same time. So it was
Yeah.
one guy doing all of them. I don't understand.
So one person, okay, first of all, I want to correct your misinformation which you're giving people here about how alcohol is banned inside Islam.
Oh, no, so I apologize. Nadir, I wasn't comparing this to Islam. This is this is my own.
As long as we understand that's not
Right.
how Islam is achieving.
Right,
this.
absolutely. That's not what I'm claiming. So I'm
Okay.
saying that Bob is a hypothetical
Okay.
human I've made up with this hypothetical religion, and he
Right.
commanded people that if you drink alcohol, we will beat you. That belief caused that society to stop drinking alcohol. I'm not accusing this of Islam. It's not a
Okay,
comparison.
let me now address your point.
Okay.
I will actually just take 1 minute, uninterrupted 1 minute, if you could. Okay, so you pointed out, let's say there's a guy named Bob. It's possible that he can do all these things in this world. Maybe, and I will grant, maybe he could condemn alcohol, and maybe he could look at past books, at old books, and say, wow, that's really wrong. I can fix that. And that's definitely naturally possible. But what we know for this one guy now to do this and then start a scientific revolution, the same guy to start a scientific revolution. Now it's getting a little bit preposterous for one man to do all these things. And then he turned around and...
Okay, so the claim is that he started a scientific revolution. What's your evidence for that?
What's the revolution?
Yeah.
What's scientific? It's stupid. Yeah.
gave 4
Which is
scientific
why the Muslim world has been in scientific darkness since the 6th century. Is that the
Yeah,
revolution?
But the thing with
they
people, I
probably
don't
argue
think
that there was this renaissance and then there was the split.
Which was a plagiarism and an adaptation of pre-existing sciences that were already there. They just sort of like added a few features. There's not really much.
There's quite a lot. I mean, they did advance it.
Optics, some optics, yeah, but they advanced what was already there. That's
But it
the
was
point
not a
I'm trying to make.
revolution. This is the whole point.
No.
But I don't think what Nadir realizes is he has just created a strawman. I don't think he realizes it. And it's a pity TJump didn't notice it and tell him, listen, what you just did, that is what you call a strawman.
Yeah.
correct statements about the bee. We know that's not possible. This is not something which is just anybody can do because
Why not? What's your argument that nobody could do it? How do you know that nobody else did that either before him or at his time or after him, somewhere else that's totally unrelated, never heard of him, never read the Quran? How do you know that's not possible?
we have many examples from Aristotle, Pliny the Elder, and other than them who have tried to do that, and they got some things right, some things wrong. The issue
but that
about
was
the
1,000
scientific
years earlier.
to be here, there's no way you could score 4 out of 4 without error. That's not possible, and we know that because we got the writing. Nobody, and you say, okay, somebody can do all that stuff. Who? Show me one man on planet Earth who has ever existed.
No. This is shifting the burden here. You made the claim. Tell us, in your view, this is impossible. Why should anybody accept that? Now the claim is, show me somebody else who did that. But here's the thing. I mean, that's disingenuous anyway, because if you showed him somebody else, do you think he's going to concede and go, oh, okay, do you know what, I retract that. Islam wasn't the case, or, the supernatural, because that's his ultimate claim. Now, I'm going to agree with you that it could have in fact been natural. Doesn't matter if you brought him somebody else and the evidence was overwhelming, he's still not going to accept that. He's going to pick holes in that exactly the way we're picking holes in his ridiculous thing. He just hasn't demonstrated. He just asserted it, but there's no argument actually, and then claims that he's actually successfully argued. He doesn't know what an argument is. I've successfully made claims over and over, and that I'll pat myself on the back for. Well, congratulations. What a trivial low bar you have. You're not convincing anybody. In fact, hopefully, if you're a Muslim, you would be going, I don't want this guy on my side.
Who has done this stuff?
Remember, your argument was that it's for something to be a scientific miracle, it cannot possibly have a naturalistic explanation.
Right.
Possibly means logically possible. So if I can give you an imagined hypothesis of Bob doing all these things, then it proves it's not a scientific miracle because it has a natural explanation.
It's imaginary. That's the whole thing.
Oh dear. He's one of these Muslims who doesn't recognize the power of a hypothetical. Hey, it's imaginary, therefore I just don't have to deal with it. No, you do. The hypothetical is to show that if the hypothetical is logically possible, which you claim it isn't, then your argument is rebutted or refuted. And his response is, oh, well, it's imaginary. It didn't happen. He doesn't understand what logical possibility is, obviously.
Can somebody explain to me, why are we using the term scientific miracle? Scientific miracle to me, as somebody who is a theist, is trying to understand how Jesus turned water into wine. That would be a scientific miracle. How Jesus walked on water, how Jesus raised Lazarus. That would be a scientific miracle.
Thunder, there is no such thing. No. There's no such thing as a scientific miracle.
That's the point I'm trying to get at. I'm trying to understand it from his point of view.
Well, his claim is that this thing that science explains could only have been the case if it was supernaturally guided. But that also, I think at the very beginning, I'm sure he said it, and you guys can see if you remind me. I'm sure TJump asked him, are you saying that these things could not have happened naturally, i.e. that science cannot be brought to bear on them? And if that's the case, then you're right. You can't claim it's scientific miracle. But if he's a methodological naturalist like we are, that has the possibility to show that science is not what's the word? Prevented from exploring supernatural claims, then you could claim that then you can confound the two words together and say it's a scientific miracle, or rather it's a supernatural event, and science has shown that that's the most likely explanation. But he'd have to accept that science can in fact investigate the supernatural. If he doesn't, then of course that's a contradictory statement.
Rob, James is in the chat and he says he goes around claiming he's the best Muslim apologist in America and the only Muslim apologist defending the Quran.
I mean, he's in his own little world. I mean, like I say, he's in a different universe or a different dimension. He looks like he's in this, he's like shimmering in and out, or at least his brain is, or, the quantum mechanical that's giving rise to the, whatever brain states he's coming about through. But it's like, if we had an advanced enough fMRI type machine, we'd just see how the brain is misfiring so badly. Right, if we could plot it against proper firing brains, we'd go, holy crap! Look at the, like a brain engineer would have to get in there, like you'd have a electrical engineer come around and rewire the house. You'd need to do the same with this guy's brain. I think that's what's going on, but he doesn't realize it. Right, if the misfiring still allows the electricity to flow, although extremely badly, nobody's going to notice, or he's not going to notice himself. Everybody else can see how ridiculous it is, but. Oftentimes that's the case for people. They don't have an ability, people like this don't have an ability of, introspection, self-reflection. Look at the arguments, was that good? Question oneself. He's so confident in his dogmatism and doesn't have the ability to question himself.
put together some Superman Bob doing these things, and that's the whole point. But there's no, you have shown my challenge to you.
Wait, Nadir, remember your definition.
One man who has done this.
I don't need to, because remember your definition at the beginning was
done. It's over. Thank you.
No.
I'll shift the burden of proof and then I'll say it's done. And then I'll say thank you. Can anybody take this guy seriously? I hope not. If you're a Muslim watching, you should be a little bit embarrassed here and call this out and say, no, I wouldn't go near this guy with a 10-foot barge pole. He doesn't represent me, Islam, or anything else, and I'm embarrassed to hear him.
Because remember, your definition.
Very quick debate.
Your definition.
So I want to thank everybody for coming today.
You've lost.
Watch this. It's over.
You've lost the debate.
And that's the winning argument. That's my point.
That's why nobody should discuss with this guy. He's a dogmatic lunatic who couldn't see what a good argument is. If you gave him a manual and a set of crayons, he wouldn't understand what an argument is. And that's why he doesn't come on for that. He's coming on here to preach. And Stops dealt with him quite well, and so did other people as well. And I think Tom has to whatever degree as well. But he's saying thank you as if he's won something here. It's just mind-boggling.
No, you've just shown your ignorance of basic philosophy. So
it's over. Go ahead. Keep going.
Yeah, you've just shown your basic ignorance of philosophy. So I'm sorry, I'm going to have to mute you for a minute. And then, okay, so your problem here is that in your original definition of miracle, you said it's impossible to have a natural explanation. Impossible means it's not logically possible. Square circle, logical contradiction. So if I can show there's no logical contradiction, then by definition, it has a natural explanation. And I just gave one. Bob did all of these things. And it's because it's logically possible, that's a naturalistic explanation. It's possible for a natural human man with no supernatural being to do all of these things. Therefore, it can't be a scientific miracle because it's possible purely by natural means. Possible, again, just means logically possible. Doesn't mean you have to give an example. It's not what logically possible means. Okay, you can continue now.
Okay, well, actually, I feel like what I wanted to prove, and you pretty much conceded the point here. If you look in history, you will never find any example of Bob which has ever existed. You have already conceded that point.
No, I didn't. I did not concede that point. I said I didn't need to give examples.
Okay, if you've not conceded, give me that person.
I don't need to, because my goal is to disprove your argument, and your argument is.
But you see what's happening here as well, right? And I think that's where what I pointed out earlier. Instead of bringing a reductio against him to show that it's logically possible, Tom went into that scenario. At the point where he said all four of those things couldn't have been possible, you needed to press him on what's the argument for that. Right? Because Tom went down this view of, okay, I'm going to show you that it's logically possible that somebody else could have done that in some hypothetical. And now he's shifted the burden to, okay, well, show me somebody, right? You've done it as a hypothetical. That's just imaginary to me. Now show me somebody. And he actually thinks that he's got a point. So I think, in hindsight, maybe Tom would just press them. Don't make claims yourself, because then they're going to turn it around like it is here and like, show me, give me your evidence, right? They're quite happy to do that when it's them doing it. They don't do that themselves. So obviously they're inconsistent, but to avoid them having, to go down a red herring route where you have to defend claims, don't do that. Just say, where's your evidence for that, right? A great example was Jack Angstreich against Muhammad Hijab. He wasn't making a claim, and he just kept asking for the argument. That's what you got to do. Otherwise, they're going to do this thing of shifting the burden and then saying, well, you didn't meet your burden of proof, and I win.
Or it's what we call the Shabia shuffle. What happened to me a couple of nights ago, where I made a throwaway comment, and I said, well, everybody has some sort of a brain deficiency within them, which is obviously true. But because I made this throwaway comment, the guy latched onto that and said, okay, now you've made a claim, now you need to prove it. You need to prove now that everybody has something wrong with their brain. And I made this mistake. So I had to formally retract it for him to get away with it, because he thought he had now latched onto something that I would never be able to demonstrate. And of course I can't. But if you make throwaway comments like this, other people will do the Shabia shuffle and then go towards you and say, now you need to prove that point. And this is exactly what Nadir is doing. Well, you said that, now show me what's his name, what's his age, what's the size of his shoes, and his social security number or whatever.
Yeah, it's so easy to do, as you point out, right? And it's a discipline. I'm not perfect at it by any stretch, but it's a discipline to learn to do, is like focus on and go, what am I hearing here that's remotely substantial that I can respond to? If I'm just hearing claim after claim, I'm just going to keep asking for it. Like I say, go watch the Jack Angstreich versus Muhammad Hijab thing. You'll see there he's just kept asking for it, to the point where they thought he was a fool or whatever the case. Of course, he was doing exactly the right thing, which was, I haven't heard an argument. You made a lot of claims. It ended up in that particular thing, and maybe we'll actually cover that at some point. Them then turning it around and claiming that he was an ignorant fool for asking for the argument over and over again. And then Hijab saying, well, I don't need to give you an argument. That's what it ended up. I kid you not, go watch the video yourself. But that's what happens. That's how you expose that they have they're standing on quicksand. It's vacuous underneath. They're so used to making claims and not being pressed on them that then they get so confident with themselves that they can just say any old thing. So you've got to, press them on the claims.
Okay, just admit there's nobody you can bring in history who can match.
No, I don't need to, Nadir. I can prove your argument wrong immediately without giving any examples because you said possible.
Admit the truth, TJ.
Nadir, you're ignorant of philosophy because you just said a scientific miracle is a thing that cannot possibly have a natural
running
explanation.
away from the question.
No. This is just the first thing. I can give you 10 examples of Bob right now, but first you have to get past the first point of what you said.
Sure.
So you said that a logical scientific miracle is a thing that has no natural explanation. I can prove the Quran, nothing in it is a scientific miracle by that definition.
You don't want to be proving anything at this stage, Tom. You want him to be making the proof. The moment you do it, the burden's on you. And then he can press you for as long as he like, and he doesn't have to do anything else. And he's going to ask you for the evidence, and he's going to keep doing that, and he's going to ignore it or say, hey, you haven't done it to my satisfaction. You haven't proved it, therefore I win. And the whole thing has been turned around.
The thing is, I've been in exactly this situation, and you know what is happening. Tom is saying, if I don't do this, if I don't give him a little bit of leeway, he's just going to turn away and run. And I've been there. And then you start making concessions and you say, okay, well, let's do this, because all you want to do is keep him there. You don't want him to run. And I understand perfectly what's going on inside him.
But then I think the only way you're going to do this successfully, if you've got something irrefutable, like the inheritance error, right? That I will bring. I would say to a Muslim, hey, I've got an irrefutable error in the Quran that I can show you. I am absolutely confident to the highest level that that's irrefutable. But if you don't have something as strong as that, and you're going to make claims, or if you don't have something ready to hand, then it's going to look like he has beaten you when in fact he made the claim, he wasn't pressed on the claim, you decided to make a claim, a counterclaim, and now he's pressed you all the way on that. And to him, and maybe a few delusional Muslims, he has won the argument because you haven't backed up your claims strong enough, and you didn't need to in the beginning. That's why it's so important not to go this route.
And he wants to milk this a little bit. And by the way, Kurt, what you just bringing up, do you know that to this day, they do not understand why the sniper is a bad argument? To this day, they are still discussing this and they still don't understand it. This, for me, is amazing.
Yeah, but nobody's explained it to them, Stops. And I will if I ever get a chance to.
No, he did. He explained it several times.
Who did?
Who was there? It was not Alex, it was not Angstreich, it was just so something or other.
Ask yourself.
Ask yourself.
Yeah, he didn't do it clearly enough. In fact, even after listening to him speak to Alex Malpass, this is a separate point, he didn't quite understand Malpass's point. What Ask Yourself said, there's no contradiction. But there's a much stronger response to that sniper thing, which we could do at some other stage if we... I think we have reviewed that anyway.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Because it is logically possible to explain all of it purely naturally. So that proves that definition wrong. Now, if you want to say, in addition to that, you can't prove any other example of human did these exact four things, that's a different argument. Because I just provided that you can have a natural explanation of these things. Therefore, your original definition is wrong. You have to admit that before we can move on.
No. So individually, again, you can do these things individually. Like I will give you an example. What you pointed out about the China Revolution, and I think you also brought up the Enlightenment or something like that.
Nadir, that's a straw man. That's a straw man.
I haven't even finished my point.
Well, I know, because your first sentence was a straw man. Because I didn't say one of these individually. I said all four together. Bob did all four of these. That's logically possible. So it's saying one on its own.
How is that possible for one guy to do all this?
Nadir, what does possible mean?
For one within the realm of human possibility, how can
Nadir, you can't use possible in the definition of possible. What does possible mean?
Meaning for it to be okay. You want me to give you a definition for possible?
Yes,
Are you serious?
yes, please.
I'd prefer to just go on the internet and get you a
definition. That's okay. That's okay. Do that. I'm happy with that. It's fine. Okay. What is the definition of possible?
Yeah, but I just think that this line that Tom is going down is not a particularly strong one here, right?
Well, he wants to really ram it home.
Because really he should be saying to him, can you give me the argument why it is not possible? What's the argument for that, right? And now all we're going is to a definition of possible, right? I think what Tom
doesn't understand it.
But I think what Tom is fixated on is to show that it's logically possible, and therefore I refuted your argument.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You go to Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy, that'll be good too.
Okay. Yeah. able to be done within the power or capability of something, of someone or something
There
to be
you
done.
go.
Yeah, so
No.
within the capability. So if it's within the capability, that means I can imagine a person who has the capability to do all of these things, whose name is Bob, for example, then that means it's possible, doesn't it?
Yeah, so you're basically
Yes.
imagining a superhero.
Wait.
and that's-
Imagine is okay,
No.
because remember, possible means within the capabilities.
Oh, sure, you can imagine someone.
Right.
Oh, well, we can agree. You can imagine someone to do that. Now, I want to point out one thing which I
Bingo,
forgot to
bing,
mention.
bing,
Going,
bing. Sorry, I just said bingo, bing, 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 bing. Sorry.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
Did
we
you listen
did
to
see
Yellow Feet
this.
versus Sabor on evolution? Sabor admitted if he would be an atheist, he would accept human evolution as true. Is he
Yeah,
an
yeah.
atheist in the closet?
Yeah, we saw that or heard that. Yeah,
I didn't.
yeah, we're gonna have a look at it. Okay, so he's conceded now that it is logically possible,
Yeah.
which does, refute the original claim. But I don't think he'll grasp the implications of it. So let's just see.
All
back to the
hell
thing about the
Bob.
Chinese scientific revolution, the Inca, or whatever, the examples you brought up. See, the revolution which you brought up, the scientific revolution which you brought up, this was not done by one man, but we could probably agree maybe thousands of people are responsible.
He doesn't realize that it's a particular idea, right? He's now confused because lots of people did something. They were obviously inspired by an idea. An idea comes out of, one or more brains. And all Tom has to show, if he's going to go down this route, is that there was one brain that was the forerunner to whatever these ideas were, and then lots of people followed it. Right?
And
That's
there's
not a
plenty
difficult
of
thing.
those, exactly.
For doing these, for bringing forth the scientific revolution, and that's the problem. You are bringing thousands of people to match what one man, one book has done, and that is what makes your argument so ridiculous. See, if it was just one or two
So
things,
Nadir, you just admitted that we can't imagine a human being who has the capability to do all of these things with no God.
no, I didn't say you can't imagine. Of course, you can imagine superheroes.
That's-
Why would I ever say that? No, if I said that, please.
No, it's just human. So there's no supernatural powers here. He's just human. No, nothing greater than any other human. So
The
but
winning
Bob has
argument-
no superpowers. He's just a human being who wrote stuff, and that's it. And you admitted you can imagine this, and because you can imagine it, that means it's possible, right? So it's possible.
Let's agree on that.
So it's possible that Bob could exist without a God, right?
Yeah, TJ.
Yes?
No, I wouldn't say that. I said I could imagine in my play pretend world that there's a superhero named Bob who's doing all these things.
Okay, so we've got to just realize what's going on here, of course. He's thinking that this is not possible, and the only way that it is possible is if it's like a supernatural being that's doing this, because his claim
Godlike.
is that it can only be supernatural. So he's basically, well, okay, if there was some being like Superman that was godlike, then yeah, sure, I can imagine that. He's not realizing that what Tom is suggesting is that it's a human being is doing this. But unless
actually
Tom
trivial,
brings
yeah.
evidence for this, he's not going to convince Nadir of this. Obviously, the rest of us can see this, but in order to convince Nadir of this, the argument would have to be like so strong for Nadir because he's so dogmatically ignorant that it would have to be like that a child could understand it, and Tom hasn't quite done that, I don't think. That's why I think this line it's not effective against him. Now, if it's the case that Tom wants to just show how ridiculous Nadir is, and it's for the audience, well, okay, then that his approach is one way you can do it. But I think it would be much better if, like I say, if he'd pressed Nadir on the argument, right, and shown where his argument is a non sequitur, the claim doesn't follow from whatever he's going to try and bring up to back it up.
That's a straw man. That's a straw man, Nadir. A straw man means you know what a straw man is, right? Correct.
Sure. That's not your argument then, right?
Correct. That is exactly right. So that is not my argument because I never said Bob had superpowers. I said Bob did 4 things that are perfectly humanly possible. And all he did was write stuff. He just used his hands, so he has muscles just like mine and a mind just like mine. And he wrote stuff down and he looked at old books that were wrong and corrected them, with new knowledge, which happens all the time. No superpower there. He got facts correct about animals, like no superpower there. Caused a scientific revolution, no superpower there. So there's no superpower in any of those facts. So in my example, Bob is just a human exactly like me. His name is Bob Jump, and he did these 4 things, and that is perfectly possible. We can imagine that. You agree we can imagine that, which means it's possible without a God.
We know. Let's just take the example. Well, first of all, you are comparing the fallacy which you are doing here is going back to the thing about the bee. You do accept from Pliny the Elder, from Aristotle, they've all produced their works on bees through trial and error.
I don't understand how this
You
is.
don't have trial and error in the Quran.
You said there's a fallacy. What fallacy is this? You said there's some kind of fallacy here.
Well, I'm sorry. Actually, it's not fallacy. It's a correction to the thing about bees. What you're saying,
Yeah, obviously he's clueless about what fallacies are. He's heard the word. He's got some sort of, if we're charitable, vague notion of that a fallacy is not a good thing. And if he throws that word out or throws out straw man, then somehow that's a response to something that he doesn't really understand himself. But like I say, I think, what Tom isn't quite grabbing as much as maybe he could is that Nadir's claim is that all four of these things can't be done by humans. So the fact that he's saying that Bob can do these, Nadir is in his mind translating as, okay, this Bob can't be a human, then he must be something greater than a human. And so Nadir could fire back and say, okay, you show me that a human could do all four of these things. Not that it's logically possible, because I don't think it is. And all Tom would have to do is say, well, okay, demonstrate to me that it's impossible for a human to do it. That's what he should have done in the beginning, of course. But, now hopefully he would get back to that, but I don't think he will.
I didn't say anything about bees yet.
Yeah, okay. Well, actually, I forgot. I didn't even bring up the point. What people probably are wondering, what are you even talking about? Maybe I should explain to people, what is it that I'm talking about?
Pretty much everyone here saw the last debate and they're commenting about it specifically. No, not the bees! Exclamation point! Exclamation point! So, but wait. So my argument is that every one of these facts can be done by a human being with no God. We can imagine this, which means it's logically possible. Correct?
Do individually, one or two of them?
All collectively. We can imagine a man named Bob who can do all four of these things without a God. And because it can be imagined, that means, by definition, it's logically possible. Right?
I can't. I don't think. But here's the thing.
Tom, but Tom, he's not realizing where Nadir's coming from. In Tom's mind, it's so obviously the case. And Nadir's position is that no, you can have one or two of these, but you cannot have all four. So Tom would now need to present something much stronger to somebody like Nadir, much stronger, to show him that in fact it is possible that a human can do this, because his view is it's just impossible. So Tom now has a big burden actually to do that. Just to say that it's logically possible is not going to convince Nadir. It will convince us. But if he's trying to, like get his interlocutor to think critically, then this is not going to work. Just repeating the claim over and over again.
I think I have already achieved what I wanted to achieve.
Could you Google the definition of logically possible for me,
okay,
please?
Let me just finish my point here. First of all, going back to the thing, I want to make a correction here about the bees, just so it's clear to everybody. All the people who have done research on bees, from Pliny the Elder to Aristotle and others,
didn't say anything about the bees. So
I know, but I want to make it clear. If you just let me talk here real quick.
Well, you already brought this up the last time. I want to use our time efficiently as possible. So
allow me to speak.
I'd really like you to the definition of logically possible in philosophy just means it doesn't have a contradiction in it. That's what logically possible means. So are you okay with that definition?
Well, no, I think I'm done in the sense, like, I think I've achieved what I wanted to achieve
that's
here.
Okay. You can think that.
And I want to. Here's what I believe. What I think is why I want people to consider why the Quran is a scientific miracle. If you'll just let me explain.
Well, just to clarify, like, I have you in a trap right now, and you've just fallen face first into the trap, and everyone in the comments is laughing at you right now. And I want to give you a chance to address this before. Like,
and that's okay. That's okay, because
I want to give you a chance to address this. So,
rude to me, you can be a jerk.
I'm not trying to be a jerk here. I'm trying to just give you an opportunity to clarify this. Logically possible.
I'm trying to get out of this discussion with you, because I
Okay.
feel like it's being.
That's fine. That's fine. But I want to be fair to you and give you a chance to respond here. So logically possible in philosophy means you can imagine it because it doesn't have a contradiction. Like, you can't imagine a square circle, but you can't imagine there's pink leprechauns on Mars or whatever. That's imaginable. So it's possible. So in philosophy, something is possible if you can imagine it. Like, if it doesn't have a contradiction, you can't imagine a round square, so that's not possible. So is it possible in logic to imagine a man named Bob who did all of these things with no God? That's what I keep asking you. Is that possible? And you keep saying no, which...
Yeah. Well, I think, now I can imagine, like, Superman. I can imagine all kinds of fictional, supernatural type characters in my head. That's
a straw man again. That's again, because I didn't say anything supernatural. I didn't say any superpowers.
Just understanding your imagination.
Yeah, but like I say, Tom is misunderstood, or is not grasping in this point where Nadir is coming from. In his mind, it's just not possible that a human could get all four of these things right. So when Tom says it's logically possible, in Nadir in his mind goes, no, it's not. You have to be Superman. You have to be like inspired by a god or something like that, right? So Tom has to bring something else to break through there. But I think Tom is going, well, hey, this is just logically possible. It's like almost a priori the case, and Nadir is just not accepting that. So Tom has to bring something else here to even remotely try and convince him. He doesn't need to convince us. I think obviously we can see that's the case, but to convince somebody like that, you've got to bring something else, not just keep repeating that thing. It's just like hitting your head against the wall.
Remember also that he does not know that Muslims in general have a problem with conceptualizing and thinking in hypotheticals.
Yeah, that's true
This
as well.
is the general thing that I have observed so many times, and we see it at work here once again.
Correct, yeah. You've got to find the right person, Muslim, who's prepared to accept hypotheticals, that has a little bit of, that sort of thought process going on. Simpletons like this just will outright deny that.
Is there any discussion of the bees going to take place?
No,
I can't wait for the part about the bees.
No, we'd have to look at part 1. This was specifically a request. That's why we went to part 2. But there is a part 1 to this. I'll post it after this.
But I feel like once you're going down that road, I've already achieved what I wanted to. I kind of looking to get out of this discussion here.
That's great.
I bet.
But again,
I've already demonstrated. No, you've already conceded to the point. Nobody in history.
No, I never conceded that.
Do all these things.
No, I never conceded that. I said that I don't need to give an example because I've already proven you wrong. So I can give you 10 examples, but it doesn't make a difference. I've already proven you wrong. So because of the definition of possible, it just means can be imagined. That means you can imagine that.
I feel like because you can imagine a guy named Bob doing all these things.
That means it's possible.
Something like that has never happened in reality. You feel
here, that's a different topic. All that means is it's possible. So that means, given your definition.
Do you see there? He also says, right, it's never happened in history. I'm just listening to this. If I'm in Tom's shoes, demonstrate to me that it's never happened. Just demonstrate it's never happened. Oh, well, blah, blah, blah. Just demonstrate it hasn't happened. You'd have to get evidence from every single place on Earth to show that it's not possible that somebody else could do this or came up with this somewhere else on the planet Earth. A virtually impossible task. Right? But the comment is a throwaway claim, and those are the things it's like laser focus. You've got to be focused on when those claims come up. It's so easy to just try and push your points and ignore those things.
At the very beginning, you said Quran is a scientific miracle, which means it is not possible for there to be a naturalistic explanation. That's what you said. I can quote you for it. I wrote it down. That means, based on the definition of possible, you are wrong. Definitively proven wrong, because it is possible, and we can prove it's possible because we can imagine it. There is no logical contradiction. Therefore, it's possible. Therefore, your original definition has been proven wrong with
because you
absolute
can
certainty.
imagine it happening.
That's what possible means, Nadir. That's what possible means.
I guess I might have a different definition than what you.
Okay, that's why I asked. How do you define possible?
Well, first of all, let me just, I feel like I'm really not able to, express what I want to say because you keep interrupting me. And I feel like once you start doing that kind of stuff, it's just walk away from the guy. That's why I kind of want to walk away from this discussion because I feel like, and I told you that we should have a debate. You should have a set time limit so that.
I'm happy with the debate. Everyone in my comments is enjoying this thoroughly. We're enjoying it. So.
You could bring me here. You could tar and feather me, try to talk me down. Try to.
Okay, now we're on to the martyr thing. Poor me, I've been talked over, whatever. I didn't get my 2 minutes every time to
That's an old argument
to your audience. Yeah,
that's an old argument. That's an old argument. He uses that quite a lot when you'll turn around and say things like, "Where's 2 of you and only 1 of me?" He's taken 2 minutes more than me, and I need to have my 3 minutes back. It's an old argument that he uses with a lot of.
Come on, he did the same with me. Word for word, he said the same thing to me and then ran. Goodbye.
And we only got 20 seconds left. Yeah.
Embarrass me. That's fine. You can do that. I'm not claiming to be some kind of Teflon Don. So I think I feel like I made my point with you, and I feel like there's no point in continuing like this. So I think we should just call it a day.
Sure, I'm happy with that. C'est la vie. The Quran has been debunked thoroughly. Thank you for talking.
All righty.
Oh boy. That was fun. But it's also cringeworthy. It's embarrassing to have a person like that.
Yeah, and again, right, if a Muslim's on here claiming that we're going after low-hanging fruit, I mean, he's probably the lowest hanging fruit that we've come across. I mean, even Redbeard Hamza is elevated above that, and that's saying something. But it was a request, right? And so, but I think the important thing is the tactics for somebody like that to go on there, right? He's accomplished what he wanted to do, which is come and spurt facts. Geez, like even I'm getting hypnotized on occasions by his nonsense. He's come there to make claims. He hasn't demonstrated or substantiated them at all, and that's what he wants his 2 minutes for, just so he can ramble off things like that. And Tom didn't allow that. But like I say, I would have taken a different tact on that and kept the pressure on him, and I think Tom let that off a little bit. So again, that's a learning for next time, or certainly if anybody else were to waste time with this guy.
Okay, I hope everybody enjoyed that. If you have a request that you want to see discussed here, or even if you want to participate, no problem. Bring it up, we'll talk about it, because we're always looking for examples, we're always looking for things where we can show people how to do it better, how to improve, and demonstrate what the tactics are of Muslim apologists. So with that, is there anything that anybody would like to comment on this?
I think I've said everything I want, so maybe Thunderous,
think
if
the
he's got
people
any
did
closing words.
already.
No, I thought, to be honest, I've listened to Nadir. I think Stops was going to arrange a debate between me and Nadir sometime last year, wasn't it, Stops?
Yeah,
About
he never bit.
really, to be honest, you advised me not to, and I took your advice not to bother because you was going to monitor the debate. But in the end, to be honest, after you've seen 2 or 3 Nadir's debates with other people, you kind of get the idea of what you're going up against. And this is a guy that wants to speak and not listen.
Yeah. But you have this a lot. All right, then. Come on, guys. If anybody wants to discuss Islam some more, you can join us on the Discord channel. There's actually a lot of fun to be had if you don't do it like me, because I got banned nearly everywhere. So it's fun talking to people, and there's more and more channels opening themselves up because they're curious, what do these atheists have to offer before banning us. So if you want to do this, then go for it. Next time, review Yarapit versus Subua. So make some self-refuting statement. Yeah, but this is Subua, okay? I don't know why people think that he's so strong. Every time I sort of come across him, I see him making mistakes and really bad ones. I don't know why people think that he's so difficult. All right, then what is left to do is for me to take the closing hadith of the week. Now, what I've selected this week is 3 of them because they're very, very short, and they're all on the same topic. It's from Bukhari, book 8, 3311, volume 7, 62, 64, and volume 1, book 4, number 229. And it's all about Aisha, because she reported that Allah's apostle married her when she was 7 years old, and he was taken to his house, and he was taken to his house as a bride when she was 9, and her dolls were with her. So there's a lot of confusion here. I mean, it's a bad translation because I think it should be she was taken to his house as a bride when she was 9, and her dolls were with her. Now, there's a couple of things here that if she was married when she was 7 and she had her dolls with her, that means she was still a child. And when she was taken to his house and she had the dolls, she was still a child. The next hadith says, the Prophet married her when she was 6 years old, and he consummated his marriage when she was 9 years old. And then she remained for him for 9 years, i.e. till his death. And then the last one, I used to wash the traces of janaba, which is semen, from the clothes of the Prophet, and he used to go for prayers while traces of water were still on it. In other words, water spots. Now, there's one thing I want to point out. I don't know if this helps people. Nowhere in any documentation, any text, any manuscript, does it actually mention, because Muslims always make this claim, nowhere does it actually mention that Aisha already had her period. This is always something that Muslims claim. Because she had menstruated, she was an adult and could therefore be married and could have sex. Well, ask this Muslim, where does it say that? Because it doesn't.
Well, I think it's even worse than that. Just because a child menstruates, that's just the start of the maturity of the body process, the biological process of a child turning into a woman. That a period doesn't mean anything in that sense. It's just part of the biological process. And second of all, I'd just like to add on that as well, that this is a historical fact based on the authentic text of the Quran. So you have 1.7 billion human beings there who, by identifying themselves as a Muslim, are in fact, by implication, supporters of child rape. So the nice guy that you work with, or the nice nurse that happens to be a Muslim, or the guy at the corner shop that happens to be a Muslim, that are nice guys or nice people, they are in fact supporters of child rape. The only way that they can remove themselves as supporters of child rape is to stop identifying themselves as Muslims. That is the only way to get out of that. If anybody identifies themselves as a Muslim, by implication, they're supporting Muhammad and therefore supporting child rape. Simple as.
Yeah. I doubt that anybody's going to do that, but it's a good suggestion. Okay, then, that's it for today. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the people who have spent this time with us. in the chat. Thank you very much for that. Thank you very much to Thunderous and Rob. I don't know what happened to Mustafa. I thought he was going to pop in. And it's a pity that Smartcat didn't make it today. But I think he said he wouldn't be able to make it today. So thank you very much. Please leave a thumbs up on the way out. And if you feel like talking a bit, come and join us on the channel.
Thank you very much and good night.
Good night, everybody.